I really wanted you to say I practice safe sex. I don't know why you didn't say it. I was really optimistic that was.
Whatever it is, bears do. Thanks for joining us. This is our show. Hope you enjoy it.
Whenever you say that Kurt does car accidents, I picture Kurt in his office with those little Matchbox cars, like running them into each other. Is it soft tissue?
We are joined today by a very esteemed guest, fellow attorney at law, Esquire, James Johnston.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to come here and serve as your adult babysitter for a few hours. I feel like your moms know you're not going to get in trouble as long as I'm here. I'm between you and the door, so if something goes south, I can protect you from the threats that are coming in.
Are you basically like the neighbor that because you're there we can use the microwave? That's what it sounds. It's like you're the neighbor that like gives my mom pot and then comes over. I mean, you brought her all the way
I'm not
there.
going to give your mom
Pot?
No.
I mean, it's cannabis
You
is
can-
decriminalized now.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of why. Right? I mean, there's nothing special about it.
I thought you were the
know?
neighbor that's still running the shadow economy weed business because it's
No.
like don't want to give it up yet. Plus, you get the best stuff from California.
I appreciate that. But no. Thanks. You've confused me with someone else. You've confused me with one of your other guests. But thanks. I really appreciate coming on. And I'm a little bit puzzled by the socks. That's a pretty bold statement.
Are you referring to my socks with Adam and my face on it?
You both have them on. Yeah.
Oh my God, you wore yours too today?
Yeah. So what's the...
We are masterminding.
I have a couple of questions, having never been on a podcast before and also never encountered two men who have socks on that match and have each other's faces on them too.
And we didn't even mean to do it.
That's even creepier. Like, that doesn't help.
Really? I think it helps
That doesn't help.
tremendously.
So what's the process? I mean, do you go online? Is it like an Etsy thing?
no,
and
our
you
staff,
upload?
our staff bought them for us as presents, and then we both happened to wear them on the same day.
And then they all quit en masse.
They did, right after the socks.
They think
post-socks.
so little of you that in the world of gift giving, this is where they
In
landed.
Spanish, they call it the calcetines revolución, the sock revolution. No, seriously, two of them gave them to us, and then next thing we know, we had new paralegals. It was like we got socks on the way out.
Socks for Christmas. We probably should have seen it coming, right?
The sock revolution.
Yeah,
I'm just sort of assimilating that concept. You know?
you can tell a lot by the faces that they chose of us.
It
Like,
looks
you
a lot
could've
like
gone
me,
through
I
a
gotta
lot
be
of
honest.
pictures. You mean mine?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we kind of look
does.
alike anyway.
Yeah, but we have some demographic
Yeah,
similarities.
I often look like my
I'll agree with
babysitters.
Speaking of things that look like you, here's the guy who is stealing your identity.
that. Yeah, I was kind of excited that somebody was stealing my identity. Like, it creates a sense of urgency, but it's not doing it for me.
I mean, the picture that you sent us for this episode is inarguably probably the worst guest photo that anyone has ever sent us, because you look both like a sex offender and a lawyer who represents sex offenders at the same time.
I am one of those two things.
You're like, I don't know who told you.
We're going
like,
to
it'd be
leave
great.
the answer to that up to you,
Dude,
listeners.
it's an upshot. Like, who uses a fucking upshot on their website? That's why I brought up the OnlyFans
So
thing.
I brought that. I sent that to you in part because you said you wanted to talk about juvenile law and all these other, issues that we have.
We're going to get there. This is a
And that's my picture from when I worked at the Department of Juvenile Services. I was the legislative director there for about 2 years, 2019 to 2021. And that was my web page shot.
Oh, that's a state.
Right?
That was a state photo.
That's a state photo, my friend.
But I can tell.
That's a state
They must
photo.
have the same person that does mugshots for our clients.
No, they just have some random person with a camera. And we were actually over on Fayette Street. There's a building that was condemned essentially shortly after we moved out. And they just said, okay, well, we go up to this abandoned floor with a blue screen. Then someone takes a picture, and next thing you know, you're on the masthead.
Is that
So
why
that's
you didn't
why
want
I
to
sent it
send
to
it?
you.
Because you wouldn't respond
you
to
would
anyone's
enjoy
text
it.
messages, and I'm in the middle of a motion to suppress. I'm on hour 4 of the motion to suppress, texting you underneath at the table, send me a fucking picture, please.
Well, so once you started bugging me, then I kind of, it's like you called too many times.
You made me want it. And I was wanting
Yeah.
it. That's what it was.
Yeah, I didn't know you were in front of Sylvester Cox. Had I known, I would have called Judge Cox's chambers. And I really wish I would have known where you are. So we should do a Find My Friend so I can find you at any minute. And then it'll ping right to Judge Cox's courtroom.
I will tell you, you would have enjoyed today only because he's one of those judges when you have the relationship with some judges that you've known them long enough, they give you, whenever you do something a little flip, they've known you for so long that they don't even say anything to you anymore. They just kind of give you this look that like, and you're like, okay, I went too far. Like they don't even need to say anything to you. I'm like, all right, uncle.
It's a nearly
Uncle
familial
Cox.
relationship, and
he's great. I mean, he's one of the best judges. I love him.
I also want to apologize to you. I've been thinking about this all week.
Oh God, can we edit this to the forefront of the podcast, please? Maybe put some music behind it. No.
What song would you put behind it?
Boom, boom, boom.
So I was in felony in the city as a public defender. You got promoted out of district court,
Boom, boom.
and I got assigned to Hayes, Jeremy. Now I wanted that assignment. I
Hold on a
have
second. Is this real?
Yes, I may have assigned that to myself, but remember I met you.
How
I knew who you
how
were.
was that a
I
conversation
knew who
at
you
the
were.
public defender's office that I needed to get hazed? With all the other motherfuckers that we worked with that were difficult to deal with, I needed to get hazed?
They all needed to get hazed
But why?
because you came up from district court,
Fair
right?
enough. Okay.
Did a little bit of misdemeanor time, and then you show up in part 45 with Charlie Peters.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, the guidelines are like 12 to 20. So I was thinking you could plead like 15. We could do a cap. And you're like, yeah, that's never going to happen. Just so you know, I can see into the future, and that's never going to happen.
Are you leaving out the
Like,
bunch of cases
ever.
that I won in misdemeanor? Are you saying I came in a little hot to felony because I won a lot in misdemeanor?
No, I like how everybody wins a lot in misdemeanor. It's a misdemeanor. Right, that's the point.
Dude, I was cooking cakes back then. I was
Right,
cooking
that's the
pancakes
point,
back then.
right?
I was making. I was serving up breakfast.
It was before body camera where the cop was like, I saw him 275 yards away. It was raining and it was at night in December. And I saw the unlit joint in his hand. And then we approached to arrest him. Jerry's like, thank you for your service, officer. Judge, I don't have any other questions.
First of all, are you sure you're not describing Kurt? Because that's some Kurt shit. And Kurt's not here, so I can say that I was never that bad. I wasn't prosecuting weed cases. We both know I wasn't prosecuting weed cases. I smoked weed cases. Those went away very quickly.
Yeah, but then that guy runs and there's a gun and like 40 bags of rock
that's my
cocaine
jam.
and
Well,
like
that's
some
my
other
jam.
shit. Yeah, so yeah, I didn't want to. I left that part out.
Hold on a second. So you're being unclear in the story. Did someone like Janine Meckler assign you this task?
No, I want
Or
to tell
did
you that
go-
happened. Like you want to think that we had like a Sopranos style
Like a whiteboard.
diagram. They're like, all right,
yes.
Eldridge, what do you know about him? All right, all right.
Exactly what I want.
What do you
I want to
know?
be the Frank Lucas of the state.
All right, hold on. Who's been doing surveillance on Eldridge? Come on in. All right, what do you know about him?
Yeah, Eldridge. It was because he wore that chinchilla. That's what it was.
Be like, look, we don't know about his shoes. We got a guy looking at his shoes because that's really the key. Once we get that information, we'll be able to successfully haze it. No, the thought was this wasn't like a grand plan, right?
You're really ruining this story. Can you just you add some oomph to this a little bit? Like,
Yeah.
make it a little more.
Yeah, we were
grandiose.
like, all right, you got to be dicks to those new prosecutors. You have to be. Right?
Well, I think it worked. I mean, I'm pretty chill now. I'm super
I don't know
chill.
that
I'm
hazing
super
you-
chill.
you know, just that sort of like, oh, you 15, cap of 15. Yeah, that's great. Hey, Charlie Peters, this guy doesn't know what he's doing.
And then I beat your ass at trial.
No, but you did it. You quickly assimilated into the culture and found your home. I miss those days.
I do too.
I do. I miss them not just because you think about I was great when you were younger and newer lawyer and you
I
know,
had 300
learning.
fucking drug cases, man. That was. You had to get with the program, honestly. You can make the joke about hazing. When you have 300 fucking drug
Yeah.
cases, you better get with the program.
And that's
quick.
really part of it was the hey, there's a process here. And that's what I miss in a way is I think you were talking about Judge Cox, Sylvester Cox, who's a great person, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's definitely towards the end of his career. I don't know how old he is, but yeah, he's got a couple years, and I think he's probably.
But
gonna
he knows
retire,
his ass
right?
from his elbow in every sense of it.
So I love all the judges on
Yeah.
the city bench. I mean, really, we got a lot of really talented folks. Got some new people who are great too. But there was this sense of like shared responsibility, shared sort of, you know, almost like sacrifice when you were there like 10, 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Because you had judges with these enormous personalities. John Previs, who passed away years ago. But, you know, there's no one in the state like him, right? No one.
Unique personalities.
Absolutely. Johnston, who's in private practice now.
Who
I
used
think
to
still,
carry
right?
3 guns on the bench.
At least.
Yeah,
At least.
on a good day.
I mean, he has more firearms than some Ukrainian units.
Less than Israel, though.
Right. But I mean, they've had longer to sort of arm
Exactly.
up, you know.
Yeah.
Themel's a one-man
hoarders.
Greek army.
Yeah.
Right.
We are
Themel's,
Sparta.
like you had these judges who were absolutely, I think, aware of the authority that they had. Were not afraid of their colleagues, right?
They didn't give a shit.
Not afraid of anybody. Not afraid of parole and probation.
I kind of
anything.
liked it better, feeling a little bit more like the Wild Wild West,
Me
but
too.
a shared trust versus sort of like a pyramid scheme.
Me too. I mean, you had this sense that even though you might have been prosecuting, I was a public defender. Everybody was working. You had to work together to get through the day.
Shared misery.
Right? You know, you had a VOP docket with like 40, 45 folks on the docket. I was going to say cases, but they're people, right?
Yeah.
40, and maybe 10, 15, 20 are in jail. Like, you don't get through that unless everybody comes together and is like, all right, we're going to knock this out.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't feel like that now when I'm in the city. You know,
No,
and it's just
I
a
don't-
feeling, and I
don't blame the bench for that completely. I mean, I think there's some we could get into it. We could spend hours and hours talking about that.
Yeah.
But COVID changed it,
I agree.
and Marilyn Mosby being in office changed it. Yeah, and so there's a lot of changes to get at, and there were a lot of bad things back then too. I mean, there were a lot of things like administrative court, which I'm not going to delve into, but there was a lot more running around and or jockeying cases around to get dates and continuances and stuff like that don't necessarily exist now in a good way, but the camaraderie between the offices was a lot better back then too.
Yeah,
and you had people that had been in those positions for a long time, so you had people to really educate you. I mean, that's something we've had Ivan on to talk about too, as far as like trying to reestablish this idea of, to your point about, I'm going to haze this person, but like you have to be there for a while or have people above you to be like, we need to haze that motherfucker.
We all enjoyed it. You enjoyed it.
Yeah, dude, I had a great time. I had a very good experience. That's why I campaigned for Ivan, because I want people working there now need that, to some degree, need that experience. And you need those relationships with the person on the other side of the table, or else you're not going to get shit done.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I do think, I spent a long time as a public defender in the city. I was in the county for a bit, other areas too. And the culture there has changed dramatically. I mean, you have some other office mates here who spent a lot of time there. So, certainly that's not new to you. I'm sure you talk about it around the water cooler, but it is the idea that you all go out for a drink afterwards. I think that's not something that's, kind of part of the current generation of lawyers thinking, right? That you're going to end up at the sidebar and,
Which was the little bar across from
Yeah.
Mitchell.
Great
at the
bar.
end of the block.
Great bar.
Well,
And
do
it
you-
was
do you think
disgusting.
That's not unique to the public defender's office or the state's attorney's office now. I think that's is that not a generational thing that we're seeing with
I think so. I think so. I think part of it's the way people are taught in law school. I mean, it has to be, right? That you are part of a bigger community of attorneys, right? You may have a role in that community, but you're part of that community. And for your client to get a good outcome, right, for things to work, for the system to work, everyone needs to at least make an effort to get along. Right. You may not succeed, but you need to make an effort. And I don't think that the newer lawyers, I say younger, but some of them are they went to law school later in life. The newer lawyers have been, instructed basically in law school. Like that civility piece, I think is lacking in a way, which I think is unfortunate because it makes it more difficult for everyone.
Well,
I wonder if
you
it's
know.
civility or just like plain socialization.
I think that's where I brought up COVID. I mean,
You think so?
I think COVID impacted it, and I think the idea that most of us were, in order to get a job in our respective offices, were not required, but it's a bit of a forced choice to be a law clerk. I worked just 2 years as a law clerk, and then you have all these people there that have been there a long time, and so you're then brought into that community. But the Mosby, and this isn't just about Maryland, so I don't want to make it about that, but the heavy turnover and the lack of experience and all that stuff, the end result of a lot of that stuff was the destruction of community in that office.
Mm-hmm.
In your
That's
old
a great way to
office,
put it.
I can't speak to,
That's
but
absolutely.
but when you come in,
Yeah.
when you graduate law school and you get hired as a prosecutor, it's like, hey, by the way, because of a global pandemic, you're on Zoom and you're not seeing your colleagues. And, Ivan brought everybody back, and a lot of people had a lot of problems with that. Like, no, I'm comfortable and I want to be at home. And Ivan's like, none of you really know what you're doing. A lot of you new lawyers have no idea what you're doing. You need to be in an office where you can ask questions and go to more experienced people, and that way you're there. Because a lot of the learning was OTJ, on the job learning. Like a lot of it was seeing people do things in district court, sitting at the table next to them, in circuit court, going and watching everyone else try jury trials. You know, I'm sitting there trying cases with Todd Oppenheim, you know, case after case after case with him, and there would be my friend sitting in the back or his friend sitting in the back. And Todd was older than me, but the idea was you're there at work and your supervisor, like Kirk, man, like Kirk Osborne was an amazing dude. Go watch, go sit next to him. And that's what all of us were doing on both sides. But that world died off, unfortunately.
Yeah, your home was the courthouse. And that sounds, simplistic or nostalgic maybe, right? But you had this dwell time. You were just in there all day. And you learned by osmosis. You saw other things. You saw lawyers like Kenny Ravenel, right? Who obviously things are, he's in a difficult position now. But if you watched him in court, you learned something every time, right?
His voice always surprised me. I just have to be honest with you. I remember everyone says his name, and he's a bad motherfucker. And then I watch him try a case, and I walk in, and I just didn't expect that voice coming out of that man.
Well, to go to your point, I think this is true, and I talk about it with my associate all the time, who started, graduated law school during COVID. In the immigration court setting, not unlike what you guys, grew up in, we would have these huge master calendar dockets, right, with 50, 60, sometimes 70 cases on the docket. And depending on the judge, you either, it was like first in, first out, or you just sat there until your case got called. Looking back on it, it feels like it was a huge waste of time to be sitting around to go sit at trial table for literally 30 seconds to, pick a date for your final.
That was our arraignment docket. Yeah.
But the whole time you were there, you saw how that judge dealt with this type of case and that type of case, and how the trial attorney for Oprah was handling this or handling that. You got opportunities standing in the back to talk to other private practice.
And the judge knows who you are.
Right.
Because you've been there.
Everybody knows who everybody is. And just that, as you said, like that learning by osmosis, now we log on to a master hearing, you sit in a fucking Zoom waiting room until the judge pings you in. You're not even able to observe what's happening in the other cases before yours. So there is it's not just that sense of community, but the sense of educating young lawyers how the system works.
We're a lot more isolated. I mean, that's what it comes down to. I mean, we're even in Part 46 where James and I may go for the city, which is the reception court for the city, so you can see everyone doing everything. I think I'd rather be in your situation, honestly, and be waiting. But if I had to choose between the two, but even though we're in a room with a million different people on Zoom, it's way worse. And you're just sitting there, you're not learning anything. And I don't mind doing it because there is some efficiency to having all the courts open, and I understand the benefits to it. But it was way better when we were all there, kind of squeezed in like sardines.
Yeah, I think the point that I think you're both making is, if you want to have the best possible interaction with someone, just that level of familiarity where they know who you are. It doesn't need to be a close relationship, right? Just that comfort factor, and you're losing that. You're losing that. So if a new lawyer calls somebody at the state's attorney's office, right, it's a cold call basically, and there needs to be some level of trust.
Right.
And I think that's one of the things that is only really created through some sort of in-person interaction, right? Now, maybe if you have a lot of interaction on Zoom or on the phone or something, it's different. But you need to have that trust. Yeah. And, so much of, I think, criminal work is handshake work, right? So if I had a case in Cumberland the other day, and we were talking about it. And
Our shared client.
Yeah, we're not going to use any names or anything like
shared
that.
Clients.
We do. We're not going to use any names, but
it's like J&J Music Factory.
I talked to the prosecutor. They told me what was going to happen. That happened, right? That's disrespectful to J&J Music Factory. Right? That's like real talent. Are you kidding?
I thought we were going to do the Running Man later. I'm super excited.
We can. I just want to have a tiny coffee first. I love that. I love the whole I love everything about that.
You're supposed to be done hazing me, dude. You were in the public defender's office when they assigned you this. You should get a fucking retirement based on how much hazing you've done with me.
I mean, you have a toilet with coffee.
We're the same age. You do realize that.
Yeah, I'm not hazing
you're
you
like
because
52 and I'm 48.
No. How old are you?
How old are you?
I just turned 48. How old are you,
Don't
Jeremy?
ask a woman her age. What are you doing?
Wow.
This is strange.
44.
You have a toilet bowl full of coffee, so it's got nothing to do with
Full
your
of
age or
Nespresso
experience.
pods.
I know. I'm gonna
Don't
steal
look
it.
at my little tchotchkes.
I'm gonna
Don't
steal
stare
it.
at my
I love your
tchotchkes.
tchotchkes. This comes from a good place.
Yeah, I just.
Yeah, but that was a handshake. We were talking about a case that and that'll help your side of things out
It
in a
better.
big way, and I hope things work out long term for that person. But that was a handshake situation. They tell you what's going to happen, right? There's no, unlike civil practice where there's a filing instantly,
Stipulation
right?
of dismissal.
In a stipulation and, a letter confirming our correspondence and all that, right? It just works because people assume that everyone's operating in good faith, right? And I feel like that world's faded a little bit. I also think newer lawyers, and you have a pretty sizable staff here, professional staff, support staff.
We're a big law firm.
People are you're
Martindale,
there.
Hubble 500.
You're getting there. AmLaw 100.
Yeah, I mean, obviously.
Yeah.
They say Venable and then EN lawyers like.
I think though that newer lawyers are very mobile, and much more mobile than I remember people being when we started. Right.
By mobile, do you mean they're switching firms or positions?
Yeah, and they can be because the job market's super
pay's
strong,
great, yeah.
right? Pays way up,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, starting for new public defenders, and I haven't looked recently, but it's around
85
85, right?
plus benefits. Yeah.
So, and they're unionized now, which has some additional benefits too in terms of stability and work conditions, I'm sure. So, you can pop around. You don't like it, you leave. You can come back, and it's totally different in terms of a job market. And I don't think there's that thought. Maybe this is a good thing that it's my first job. I need to stay for 2 years, or I need to stay for 3 years, or I'll just stick it out. If they don't like it, they're gone.
Yeah.
And you see that with prosecutors. You see that with public defenders. You see that, I think, with associates at law firms too. I don't know if you've seen it. Where people come
You
in
see
and
it in
then-
different ways in different parts of Maryland. I mean, Harford County State's Attorney's Office had some attrition there, but everyone there was going to APG because Aberdeen had a ton of contract jobs paying 110, 120, and you had prosecutors making 85 or 90, and they were losing people left and right, and it was only because the federal government 10 minutes away was paying a ton of money. I mean, it's downtown. It's always been a little bit different because for years the big firms weren't hiring out of our respective offices.
Right. Right.
Well,
And
we've seen a lot of, in the past, I'd say, not 10 years, but say 5 to 7 years, a ton of folks leaving city and county.
And where do they go?
Going to ICE.
They're going to ICE. But once again, because the federal government has so many job openings. I mean, I hate saying Donald Trump's name, but Donald Trump did create hundreds and hundreds of, if not thousands of VA lawyer jobs. And so the VA was hiring a ton, and ICE was hiring a ton.
Social Security is a big one too. I think we have a distorted market here, and we don't realize it because it's home, right? But the idea that you drive 45 minutes or 15 minutes if you go to Woodlawn, how many lawyers does Social Security have in Woodlawn, right?
Oh,
I mean,
so many.
hundreds,
Yeah.
right? There are probably more lawyers working in Woodlawn than there are, downtown or in Towson even.
At
or
the
close.
FBI next door. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you've got all of these employers, many of which are fully remote or like half remote, right? So I think that's when I worked for the public defender's office in Towson, we lost a couple people, good people, to Social Security, right? Because the money's better. There's the promise of remote work. People have families. It's sustainable.
It ain't that hard. You're not litigating. You don't have clients you have to visit in jail.
Right.
You don't have victims you have to deal with. And so for both sides, I mean, there's a ton of people leaving. I mean, that's been the deal with the feds for a while now.
What I think is interesting, and this is just anecdotal, of course, but young lawyers who work either for a public defender's office, county state's attorney's office, city state's attorney's office, the path I thought was for many years, maybe you rise up in the organization in a way and you stay, right? Maybe you go to the federal public defender.
Yeah, or you do 5 years and then go to FPD. Yeah.
U.S. Attorney's Office, that sort of thing. Some people lateral to the AG's office, right? But a lot of people went into private practice. They took that associate role after they'd been out of school 3, 4, 5 years, right? They kind of were known. The judges knew who they were. They had enough experience. They were valuable. I don't see that. I don't see people coming out as often and going into private practice. I don't know if you see it, but
I think
the pay difference, what we talked about, is what has changed that. I mean,
yeah.
from having our practice, we know. I mean, the amount of resources it takes for us to take on a young associate to even match or come close to the salaries that public defender state's attorneys are paying, and they don't have any clients, so they're not, there's no ability for them to generate for us. So the hit that a lot of private practitioners take to bring on someone like that, it's hard, from an economic standpoint, to be able to pay what these state agencies are paying,
which is
also
crazy to say. Historically, is crazy to say out loud that we have to pay more than the public defender's office, because for years it was very easy to do that. I mean, for years coming out, and I mean a decade, it was 50, 60K to go into, to go be an associate somewhere, and you were happy to get that.
That was my first job.
Yeah.
Law school.
And now with the PDs and SAO, the state's attorney's office at various counties, all paying at least above 75. I mean, Rich Gibson in Howard County, if you're in circuit court there, you're making six figures.
Yeah, I think a lot of the PDs are up in that low six figures, right? And I think some of the more senior ones are, that 115, 120, 125 range, right? As line attorneys.
By the way, who are you? Because, I mean, boy, did we dove into so much policy.
We were right in the deep.
You're James Johnston.
Do you enjoy it? You can call me Jay.
What is your middle name?
Arthur.
Is it also a J?
Arthur.
I was really hoping it was another J.
Yeah, so my porn name is Arthur Cherokee.
See?
On Cherokee Street. My parents recently sold my childhood home.
I knew
so
it.
I don't know if I can still use that.
You know why? Because my free part of your OnlyFans ran out.
We'll fix that.
I appreciate that.
We'll
you haven't
that.
responded to my DMs, though. You say very responsive, and you're always green, but you never respond.
I've been busy.
You're like, sorry, in court.
A lot of customs.
Here's a new pick.
We're doing a lot of customs.
Bear lawyer.
Yeah, I would hire someone if I had the right person and I weren't looking at spending. By the time you match in a way, not just the salary but benefits and everything else, it's that's a hard thing to do. So.
Oh, you want an associate?
Do you have like an extra one laying around?
I don't know, man.
Are you trying to get rid of some folks?
I'm trying to bring you in, baby.
All right. So let's rewind a little bit.
You want to open up the books,
Let's open them up.
It's time to unfurl.
Yeah.
First job,
Whoa.
Where'd you go to law school?
I went to Tulane.
Okay.
Yeah, which is in Louisiana, New Orleans.
And where are you from originally?
So I grew up in Pennsylvania, Allentown, that area. So.
FCI.
I think that's Allen Wood.
He was born. He was born at the facility.
I think that's Allen. That's a little further north. Yeah. No, more Billy Joel. That Allentown, Lehigh Valley. So. Yeah, south of the Poconos, north of.
Come on, Gideon, jump in there, bud.
Law school in Tulane, and then how'd you end up in Baltimore?
I had I wanted to move back to the Northeast. So I was looking at Maryland. I was looking at Pennsylvania, and at the time, Baltimore. But this is this is a long time ago now. It's like 20 years ago. Baltimore was I had some friends who moved here, and it was a really cheap and really fun place to live. Mm-hmm. And if you take the bar here, you kind of had DC job options. You had Baltimore job options too. And I figured if I moved back to PA, I'd just live in my parents' basement, and I didn't want to do that. It was unfinished at the time. My dad loves hunting and fishing. He had this dream that I would be like an ADA in some rural county with like 800,000 deer and like 12,000 people, Yeah. When I say it was a dream, he expressed that. He still does occasionally.
Come home and
he could go. No, Bucks County's like.
No, that's way more.
Have you been to
urban.
Bucks County?
No.
Yeah, Bucks County's like
Bucks County's like right outside of Philly.
Yeah, it's like a more urban Howard County.
Next to
It's
Montgomery
delightful.
County.
They have these little old farmhouses you can buy, and
Bucks County's
people
like
commute to New York.
Langhorne.
Yeah, I mean that's no. He meant like. Well, you're like, this is Pennsylvania? Like, if you're driving across
He meant like
the state?
Pennsylvania as you come down from New York on 87, like that sort of country.
That's
Like
exactly what
Pennsylvania
he meant. Yeah.
Dutch Johnston, which is conveniently is your other website.
Dutch loving.
Yeah, baby.
You've heard of Dutch courage.
You've heard of Dutch ovens. Have you seen Dutch loving?
First you have the Dutch courage, and then you get the Dutch loving. That's right. We got the summer sausage.
That's a pretty good call out since we're drinking gin today.
We got the-
It's
yeah,
the Dutch
Dutch
Courage.
Courage.
That's
It's
if
good
you
stuff.
haven't been there, that is a wonderful bar in Mount Vernon,
Yeah, I just saw Phil, who works there.
Wait, it's in Mount
At
Vernon?
Bourbon and Bow Ties.
isn't it?
No,
I guess
it's
it's north of
in-
Mount
it's-
Vernon. Yeah,
Unless they moved, it's like in that.
yeah.
Oh my gosh, that was.
That's that neighborhood.
That's what they call
It is
it.
that neighborhood.
Oh my god. Cradle, I'm so impressed. I could sit around all day and never come up with methadonia. I mean, it's mildly offensive, but it's so funny that it outweighs any sort of concerns about making fun of those with substance use disorders. So, good on you, man.
I wish I could take credit.
Yeah. That's that bike lane's a little bit of it's a dicey situation. Yeah. It's like it's not great. There are a bunch of lawyers over there, though, right? Like Dennis Lay, I think, is over there. I want to say Roland Brown might be over there too, right?
Ray Griffith used to have an office up there.
Oh yeah.
On Calvert Street up that.
I don't know.
So how many? So
Yeah.
you started at the public defender's office?
Yes, I was there. It's funny. Actually, no, I started at this law firm right next to where the public defender's office is now. I think it's apartments. It was this guy named Morty Rosen who had a small firm. They did kind of anything that came in the door, mostly personal injury, workers' comp, did a little bit of criminal. And he had he's a member of the Cardin family, or he was, and he passed away a while ago, but he was related. And then the Cardins ended up in that building. If you may have been in, more recently, John Cardin, Howard Cardin, I think were in there.
And Jimmy Gimmer.
Yeah, I just needed a job. So this is back when you would look in the Daily Record, right? The back, and then you'd call, send a resume, and
Like Backpage. That's where that came
Wow.
from. Well, that's
Yeah,
where
thanks.
it came from, the Backpage.
yeah. So I looked on Craigslist, looked on Jeremy's list. It's like you've heard of Angie's list. It's like
22 inexperienced barrister.
Yeah,
Willing to work topless at
Yeah,
the
yeah.
office.
I like that. With a very specific time. Like, stop by between 2 and 4 on Saturday.
During my siesta.
Get your freak on.
Yeah, we don't work on Shabbos, but we do.
Everything's glot kosher.
Meet me at the
All of
duck
it.
pin bowling area. Meet me at the duck pin bowling down on Patapsco.
I'll be in the bathroom.
Oh, you win.
No. So, but Baltimore was I mean, I live in Baltimore now, but Baltimore had this moment back then when it was cheap as shit to live here. Right? I mean, you could buy a house for everybody was buying houses.
Dollar House, Nick Bosby.
Yeah, well,
of
not just
course.
Dollar House, but you met people who were they're bartenders, school teachers, whatever. They weren't making a ton of money. They're all buying houses.
It's an
right?
affordable city.
Well, it was.
And you had a really cool art scene too. The Copycat building was cool. People were hanging out doing these warehouse parties. You could live really cheaply. That was cool. That was attractive. So yeah, I got that first job working for Morty Rosen, who, I hated it at the time. Hated it, right? I was making $35K, no benefits.
Oof.
So, and then he told me, Pat Preller worked there. I actually took Pat's cases over. I called Pat one time. I said, hey, I heard you had all these cases that were like in litigation, but they didn't have deadlines. Like, where are they? And he was like, oh yeah, they're like under this credenza. Like, I didn't do anything with them, sort of thing. I'm sure he actually worked diligently.
That happened to
on
me in
those
the state's
cases.
attorney's office. I took over someone's
Yeah.
cases, and they were above a bookcase, and I couldn't
Yeah.
reach them.
And Pat was at the state's attorney's office then.
Yeah.
And so he would stop by and we'd go out and have a couple drinks. That was fun. But yeah, I learned a lot though, because in private practice, I was only there about a year. People can't leave angry, right? Like there's a customer service piece to it. I'm preaching to the choir here. Like you need to do whatever you have to do reasonably, right? To make sure someone has a positive experience. And you have to do that for them, for that individual client, for sort of client relationships generally, reputation, right? A lot of reasons. And so that was, people came in with these terrible personal injury claims too. And you're like, well, that's a terrible idea. Like we shouldn't get involved.
I was roller skating on 95, and they hit me.
Oh, man, someone came in once, and they came in with a terrible PI claim. We were like, yeah, there's nothing we can do for you. And then they came back like 20 minutes later, and they're like, oh, BG&E's working outside. I like fell in the hole. And I went to my boss. I was like, look, you don't really want me to intake this person. He was like, nope, intake him. Like, what? So that was the customer service piece, right? And so when I went to the public defender's office, I got hired like after a year there.
What year is that?
That's like 03, I think, 03 or 04. I had these skills that I think other people didn't have who just had a law clerk experience or just done like a clinical experience at a university. Because, yeah, you can't let people leave. You know, and you have to figure out, I think, one of the things that's interesting about private practice and why I think all lawyers should have the experience in a way is you're trying to solve problems for people as easily as you can, right? And you can be creative in doing that, you know, and you have that with immigration,
While
right?
managing a bunch of other problems that they didn't pay you for that you're also solving in
Yes.
order to make the solution in your case a tidbit easier.
That too. But when you're a government lawyer, the cases stack up, right? You roll through them and you do the best you can to close them out, but they're always going to be there. Yeah. You know, private practice is a little bit different. And I worked for the public defender's office. I left in 2019. I was in Towson at the time, and then I went to work for the Department of Juvenile Services. I was there really for COVID
Because Trick loves the kids.
No, it was fine. I was ready to do something else. I like the legislative work. And so I got a call from, the then Secretary Sam Abbott, who's a really good person, if you know him. He's the director of similar agency in D.C. now. And Gavin Potashnik had been there.
That's what was my next question.
Yeah,
He
Gavin
was a
was
city
there.
prosecutor and a Harford County prosecutor.
And Gavin
Cecil
left to be
County.
the deputy state's attorney in Harford County. We're really inside baseball now. And so they needed to fill that role. And, I was asked to come over there, which it was a good experience. I learned a lot, worked with some really good people. And, it's interesting, too, when you're talking about big state agencies, like people assume that they're completely dysfunctional. And when you look inside, usually there are a lot of people trying really hard to make shit work. Yeah. It's just really tough. And what DJS does is really tough. Like you're running basically jails, right? Detention facilities for children.
So
right? Who are there for really short periods of time. With all sorts of needs,
to
health,
fix everything in their life.
Yeah, they have health needs. They have mental health needs, right? They have, families who are in really difficult circumstances. The kids are from all over the state. You have kids who may only speak Spanish, may, only speak another language that's less common.
Let's back this up as you're diving in. And so
I'm like Michael Phelps.
I've recommended that
people pop out and do the butterfly, man. Oh.
I've recommended that people read. I like Chris Wilson's book. Chris Wilson was a guy that served time at Patuxent, and wrote a book about what it's like to be a youthful offender at Patuxent, and sort of, I think his book has even more meaning now. A little biased on how he ended up where he was, but it was a very educational.
Why are you biased?
Just because he kind of disappears as to like when he ends up in federal court, he doesn't really explain what the violation was and how he got there. We can argue about the book later. I think the book is a great book.
I haven't read it. I've met him.
I've recommended it to a lot of people. It's just there are certain parts of his life that as you get into the book, he kind of leaves out, which would help explain why he ended up back in prison that are kind of left out. Yeah. But I bring the book up to say that was my first experience of reading somebody's book that explains, sort of going through DJS and ending up at Patuxent and obviously representing people on this side. But I think where I want to start is a more macro level, which is it's really easy. And I'm one of the guilty parties, so I'll take a plea now as far as looking.
Could you raise your right hand?
Going.
You understand?
I'm definitely on some alcohol and do not understand the nature of today's proceedings.
You have the right to be tried by jury. Chosen the motor and voter registration rules of Baltimore County.
It's very easy to look down through your nose at DJS right now. And for a lot of good reasons and some bad ones too, and say, because I'm seeing it in court. I'm seeing it with judges all over Howard County, judges in Baltimore County, that when I do these juvenile transfer hearings, it is less so about an individualized analysis of my client and more so about, and I've seen this 4 times in a month with judges on the circuit court that are taking these opportunities. And if I'm seeing it 4 times on my cases, I know it has to be systematic, that I'm starting to get these policy statements about DJS. And so where I want to start is a macro level of looking at that agency to say, as you just said, these kids are in there for a short time. But what I'm seeing in court is that DJS is getting blamed for not being able to provide services and handle the number of kids coming through. And just if you can address that part of it, like numbers wise and what's coming through, because that agency is responsible, like how Ed Norris came on our podcast one time and said, what I hate about being police commissioner is that we have to solve everyone's problems, right? If the kids don't go to school, we got to pick up the kids for school. If there are people, whatever we have to do that mom and dad don't want to do at home, we end up being responsible for. And that is actually probably more true for DJS.
Yeah, I think those are great points. I'm shocked that you're in court on, do you have 4 transfer hearings in 1 month?
In the last month.
That's amazing. That's like, if you were a public defender and all you did were transfer hearings, that would be at the top end of your
I'm
case.
really fucking tired this month.
That's
I'm really
is it a
tired.
scheduling thing, or are you just so
I
busy?
mean, some of this, I'm busy, and then some of it is just you get it in when you can get it in. So I mean, the stuff gets
Can you say that again?
Name of your sex tape.
Jay,
Can you?
get it in when you get it in. I thought that's what marriage was.
Let's get together.
I thought that was just marriage, like 3 a.m. Like
Yeah.
let's roll.
I think that's any relationship when
Marriage-
you're
it's
like
being
over
a coal
you know,
miner.
over about 23. So
I have the black lung.
you know, black lung.
I said I'm like a coal miner. Like I'm down there digging mines, bro.
Whoa.
I'm in there digging up coal, bro.
Whoa.
Look,
You're gonna
That
find diamonds.
That
Keep-
took a very
keep
bizarre
looking.
left
That
turn.
was-
I'm
that
just
was
trying to. I went
yeah.
Zoolander with the black lung thing. I'm trying to start top.
Oh,
down
I
and
didn't.
say
So Zoolander, I like
politically-
Zoolander, but it's not like you know.
it's not highbrow enough. It's not focus features.
No, I just don't default to that as
You
a
want me
movie
to sing
reference.
fucking Annie or something?
You know, that'd be great.
The sun will
Yeah.
come out.
Could you do Sound of Music so we can have a more Teutonic approach to this?
Great.
You know.
I just wanted. I wanted
Yeah.
to start top down because in society we just had a bill signed by Governor Moore, which is where I wanted to head with this.
Sure,
with some
sure.
of the juvenile stuff, but where I wanted to start was just you started with the main point I wanted to make. If you can just address it, which is that you have an agency that is responsible for so much, and it's been very easy to bash them for a very long time. And what is it like working in that scenario where you're actually the one making the fucking sausage? So like, it's easier for us on the outside,
Yeah.
the judges on the outside, to be throwing haymakers. But what's it like being in there when you're trying to figure out how to deal with a lot of kids?
So there were so many good people that I worked with. I think unlike some other agencies, if you sign up to work at juvenile services, I mean, by definition, you're going to be working with kids who are in a difficult place, right? And, you know, you handle immigration, you have criminal immigration, then you have other categories of immigration, right? And some practitioners probably prefer to handle non-criminal cases, right? People are less likely to be detained.
Kids
that
in
sort of
need
thing.
of defense.
Right. And so when you look at DGS, you've got kids who need help. The same kids really that you see in DSS, Department of Social Services, you know, CPS cases, same kids, right? But these kids have criminal issues. And almost by definition, they're pretty serious. Either the individual, you know, case is serious or they have a pattern of cases that bring them in, right? DGS has a couple things that are really different than the adult system, right? And you guys know it, but you know, one, they have the authority to divert a ton of stuff on their own. So they can informal these cases. So kids come in, shoplifting is a good example, right? Lower tier stuff, secondary assaults at school, that sort of thing. DGS can just resolve those basically by making the kid do, you know, maybe some community service, maybe some classes, write an apology letter, brief period of sort of off the books probation. I mean, I say off the books, like obviously they're tracking this.
Which we want
But
them
it's
to
pre-court. So the things that we think about with diversion, right, like with the consent decree, everything
a
else,
little bit of weed.
they've been doing that for forever, right? It's part of the system, so it's baked in. And I think that's tough for some prosecutors because with adult cases, right, there's no middle ground, right? And I will say, I mean, there are some efforts, you know, to police departments to divert people, you know, citation dockets, right?
No, but
as an example.
carjackings, like once we get to carjackings, which is the big,
Right.
which is the epidemic in Baltimore.
Well, even
and PG
secondary
County.
assault, right? You know, the police, somebody gets in a fight, they go and they file the charges, right? And then it's up to the prosecutor to say, okay, well, you know, is this an appropriate thing to prosecute? DJS can make that call themselves, right? And they've had increased authority. They used to have to get the victims okay. Now they just really can't have an objection from the victim if they have trouble reaching them. That was an issue on shoplifting cases, right? You're not going to get Walmart to call you back in time.
Well, and hold on,
Yeah.
pause there for 1 second
I
because
am.
this is something about stolen autos.
I've paused.
You would get people. I'm trying to be serious, man. I know it's hard for you to take me seriously.
No, I take you very seriously. I thought there was an element of humor to this.
No,
whole
can
thing.
you just keep looking in my eyes though?
Okay.
You're just used to me fucking with you. That's what it is.
It
no,
is.
but if you
Keep
have,
going.
on the
Keep
stolen
deeper.
autos,
Deeper.
we're talking about victims not responding. You
Yeah.
could have someone whose car's stolen. It's recovered 6 or 8 months later,
Right.
and then by the time
Right.
someone contacts them, they're like, "I don't give a fuck anymore because I got the car back."
Yeah.
And thanks for catching the guy, but like
Yeah.
I've had the car for 6 months. And then, or I just got the car back, but I haven't had the car for 6 months. I don't give a shit anymore.
Yeah.
And so a lot of these situations, it's easy once again for the public to be like, why aren't you going after all these car thieves? But then by the time they come around, the victims are tired. So it's like, it's not a, it's, it there's so much nuance to this.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. No two situations are the same. And the issues in a place like Harford County are different than they are in the city, right? They are. Or, the bigger jurisdictions. Not
Hartford
just
County
Baltimore
has the
City,
death penalty.
you know?
Exactly.
Do they?
Yeah.
My brother lives there.
Yeah,
He hasn't mentioned that.
mhm.
I'll ask him next time I see him. So you have a system that's just so different than adult criminal court. And one of the things that you sort of referenced there is the time frames are a lot different, right? Kids are going to court if they're detained. They're going to trial, in theory, within 30 days.
It's supposed to.
Other kids, 60 days, right? A serious adult criminal case is going to take a year, right? 6 months, maybe a year, 18 months for some really kind of more serious, cases. So the whole system's set up, I think, and those time frames are designed to minimize the amount of time that kids spend out of the home. And I think we've recognized, like, over time, that when you take a kid out of the home, right, even if it's 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, it may not seem like a lot when we think about adult criminal sanctions like 5 years, 10 years, 20 years in DOC, but it's a real impact on
It's
that
like
kid.
Jewish summer camp.
I've actually had a Jewish summer camp case or two.
I'm sure you have.
I have.
Well, when you
can't talk
when you
about
think
it,
about it as a percentage of life,
Things happen sometimes that aren't entirely kosher.
It was one finger. It was one little finger. It was a little kosher wiener.
I've been-
but when you think of it as a percentage of life lived, then those things become, I think, more like
30 days
mo-
to a 15-year-old is a hell of a lot.
Yeah,
longer than 30
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it, percentage of life lived, but also that stage of life. You're not going to replicate that, right? 15,
Yeah,
16.
yeah, absolutely.
And the theories, too, behind it are the same reasons that we've cut back on some of the extreme, sentences, death penalty, for example, life without parole for older juveniles, for your 16, 17-year-olds, right? That same idea that you're probably going to grow out of the activity, right? And it's true. A lot of kids grow out of a lot of shitty behavior.
Yeah, it's why we see
you
less
know?
recidivism after 30.
Yeah, and then there's also this thought, and this is maybe where you want to go really deep, that, there are some good tools, right? There's some evidence-based tools, different therapies, that are available. But most kids are going to grow out of the problem kind of on their own. So I think there's this thought in some way with some of the professionals that the lighter touch is going to be better. Remember that, Jeremy? A lighter touch is going to be better.
I wish I could have sat across from you now.
So, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I mean, you can bring our personal lives into this.
Yeah. Is this your therapy? You just need somebody to talk
It's
to?
trauma-focused therapy.
Yeah. Which,
oddly enough, they offer Patuxent, but they don't offer at... they don't offer Patuxent. They offer at DJS facilities.
Jeremy, do
well,
we
it's
need
not oddly. I mean, it's a function of,
Choice.
do we need
purpose,
to
yeah.
tell him your code word, your safe word?
I've changed
He
it.
has-
It used to be watermelon, but that's not safe anymore.
he
for
has
Jews.
both a safe word and a code word.
Now it's panini.
Panini. I like that.
Yeah.
Do you have a panini press in your office? Is that
We
I'm
both know
looking
I do. It's in the
around.
drawer.
Do you have a
Occasionally-
panini press drawer? Like you can have a refrigerator drawer. That you
No,
open
just
it
yeah.
up
I do.
like
And
the
I make
clam part comes out and it snaps on your sandwich.
Dude, I make grilled cheeses.
It's
I make
gas
midday,
powered in
midday.
case
It's
the-
not gas
in case the
powered.
power goes out.
First of all, it's electric, and you have to make a midday grilled cheese once in a while.
It's got a fuel cell.
It's like an old school college sandwich maker.
Oh, that sounds great.
Those little beautiful triangle grilled cheeses that we used to make. We still make them here.
George Foreman grill.
I'm glad that we can.
Do we have one? The food at DJS is excellent, by the way. It really is. I've eaten it. They've got some great catering folks there.
So it's not Sodexo.
No, they've got in-house staff. It's really good.
Did you shave? Like, how did you get in?
No, that was their unofficial business. Their unofficial business. So yeah, I think that's part of it, that you see that with judges, you see that with.
Was there
you know,
free
other
hot
people.
lunch when you were DJS? I'm just really confused about why you were eating there. Did you drop by the Charles Hickey School and then you were like, I'm going to sit with the kids at lunch?
We would do that sometimes. Yeah.
Did you get free nuggets?
No, I think we went for Thanksgiving one time. It was nice.
You had to make it serious.
Yeah. Might have been Veterans Day. It was around that time.
Like I
We made some
Veterans
turkey.
Veterans Day?
I was about to say, I think I had pictures on my phone, but you guys were like, oh, yeah? That's not going to be good.
Pictures of kids at Hickey on your phone.
No, you got, well,
No, tell us more.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Were they upshots too?
No, no. None of the kids. Come on. But yeah, I think it's a difficult job. They've got good people, and yeah, I think part of it's up to, up to the people who are passing the legislation to decide what they want. Right? Do you want a system that looks more like a correctional system where you have kids removed from the home for like 6 months, 12 months, 18 months? We had that at one point, like kind of when we started practicing, right? That
More
was
staff secure placements.
Yeah, staff secure and hardware secure. And those placements are difficult to run, right? They're problematic just generally, right? You got to have a lot of staff.
It's
ratio.
very Lord of the Flies, man.
Well, I mean, the ratio between staff and kids, requires you to have a lot of staff, right? I think it's 6 to 1, 12 to 1.
Yeah,
for
like
some
a
of the
school, like a
facilities,
classroom.
Yeah. You compare that to adult corrections, right? Like if you went to an adult prison, like at night, how many correctional officers are there
one
per
for
inmates,
200.
right? And it's I think it's 1 to 6, and then 1 to 12 for the less secure facilities. The goal's always been, at least as long as I've been involved in this, like fewer kids out of home, right? Fewer kids in placements in places like Western Maryland or out of state, right? And then over time, the capacity decreased, which was seen as a win, right? So we don't need as many facilities. There's one Savage Mountain that we renamed Garrett Children's Center.
Yeah.
I
thought that was that Backbone. Or was that
Backbone's out there; it's a separate one.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then Cullen and
yeah, and so as you have less need, you have fewer facilities. But then for those kids who really need something that looks a little bit more like a jail sentence, that's longer, that's more secure, that's going to satisfy a circuit court judge, there's less available. And so in a way,
which is the problem I'm running. Getting
that's
back to
that's
the
where I
original
figured you
question.
were going. Yeah.
Well, and I want to jump in on that too, though, and add another sort of variable to this. I'm wondering if this is also a reflection of, at least in the city, and I don't know if the data bears this out, but certainly the sort of anecdotal, feel is that the crimes themselves that juveniles are committing have become a lot more serious. I mean, carjackings are serious fucking business.
I'm not laughing at your question. I'm sorry. It's when you keep wiggling your foot, and
I
when
was
you do
noticing that too.
Kurt's face is right by your ankle, and it looks like Kurt's talking.
I thought.
I'm sorry.
I thought that was.
I'm sorry. I'm
Kurt.
like
Yeah.
a child. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're.
I'm sorry, Adam.
No, but you bring up a good point because we've talked about before how, a lot of the because in partially because Ivan is cracking down on guns, that a lot of the gang members are having the juveniles carry the guns because
it's been like that for years.
Yeah, I
it's
think
not an
that's-
Ivan thing. That's been
I think he's having an impact based on the fact that he's not playing around,
They've
right?
always no adults have always had kids carry guns. I think it's maybe more well known now, but that's been forever. That adults have been trying to get the kid with them to take guns forever.
But is it not? I mean, is it the case that juveniles are responsible for?
That's the question.
So what you can look at, and it's all online, is you can look at the arrest data, say for the city, right? And the numbers today, it's 2024. If you go back to like 2010, I bet we're at 5-10% of the total number of arrests that you saw in 2010. I mean, the number is so it's absolutely yes. So it's there's a tremendous reduction for adults, right? Tremendous reduction, but for juveniles, it's night and day. What they call, Baltimore City Juvenile Justice Center use, baby bookings is what some people call it, right? You get central booking and baby booking. I mean, baby booking used to be, the capacity there was like 144 at one point, then 124, and they were full. Like kids would show up and they'd take them to Hickey, right, or Cheltenham, right? Because Friday night, Saturday night, place was full. And this is when they had almost no adult holds. And so that's something I was involved in. Me, Gavin, Betsy Tolentino, who was with DJS at the time, she's with Roca now, was instrumental. There are a bunch of other people involved too. But the traditional view was all these, even though the statute allowed the kids to be held in juvenile, they were all held at the city jail. And so we changed that, and we met with the bench, and everybody thought that was a good idea at the time because the conditions at the city jail were so shitty, right? They're really difficult. Schooling was terrible. Actually, schooling was not the worst part of it. The rest of it was pretty bad, but schooling was a problem too sometimes. And so a lot of those kids are now housed in juvenile facilities, right? The statute changed that's the course, by default. But yeah, DJS now mostly holds adult kids waiting to go to court for an adult decision on transfer, right? That's the bulk, or at least a really good chunk of what they have in terms of the population, and the numbers are just way down. And so what you see, though, I think, is you have a higher percentage of serious cases because they're not arresting a ton of kids for having a bag of dope or, selling a couple pills or getting in a school fight. The city police arrests almost nobody, right? And that was a policy choice that they made a few years ago, right? They were arresting a couple hundred kids a year. I mean, if you look at the numbers, and they went way down. And so those kids aren't in the system anymore.
But so many of those were humbles.
So if you just stick with the guns and the first-degree assault and the other stuff, right, then you have a smaller number of kids arrested, and you have
over handguns,
and you have a higher percentage of kids who are there for something that's pretty serious. So I think that's the difference. I don't think it's as stark in the counties. I think they've kind of kept roughly the same policies. Although Baltimore County is, I do a lot of work in Baltimore County.
Locks people up, man.
Baltimore County is so busy, and I think
it's reminiscent of old Baltimore City.
Well, that was what I was just about to ask, is what is the breakdown? You were talking a little bit about PG County, you were talking about Baltimore County, and I think there is this perception that because it's Baltimore City and Baltimore City has all these problems, that there's all these problem kids also in Baltimore City. But what does the actual breakdown look like in the surrounding counties, if you know?
Thank you for the question.
Pull out your abacus.
I will put all this on my website. So not my OnlyFans, Jeremy. I'm sorry. I don't want to confuse people. I think the issue with carjackings, is in part is this technology shift, right? That you can't steal a car unless you have the keys, right? With the exception of some very popular Korean brands, right? That hopefully don't sponsor your show.
No.
That maybe I drive.
Lawyers from the Rocks, brought to you by Kia. That's right. Quality car at a great price. We're so excited to partner with you. Hyundai, we do all sorts of things right, but
all you need is
creating cars that can't be stolen. Hyundai makes like everything. They make ships, right? And they couldn't, spend the extra $30.
We already went through this with Honda and Acura in the 90s. It was just, if you have a screwdriver, you can start the car.
Do you remember the Nissan shaved key for the Sentra?
Mm-hmm.
That was great. There was a period where if you got a key for a Nissan Sentra, and I did not do this, but it was online, and you shaved it down just right, it would fit any Sentra. And so I was at Wabash, right? And the Sentra was like the most common recent law school graduate public defender car there,
Because it's cheap.
This is like 07, 08, right? And so people would just watch their car get stolen. Right? They park right in front. Some guy walks up, they're like, shit, that's my car, but he's got a key. Whoa! And then you find another Sentra. You get where you're going, you park. It
was like Zipcar before.
It was really the first.
Lime
it was really the first
there
Uber.
14 Sentras found in the harbor today.
Yeah.
Self-serve.
The shaved, the Nissan shaved key, and then they got the chip in the key, and that fixed that. But yeah, I think Prince George's has a lot of carjacking activity because it's a more suburban county, right? So if you're gonna steal a car, you're gonna then go around and potentially steal more cars, right? Gas stations or parking lots or whatnot. It's not just a Baltimore City issue, right? Baltimore County's docket, really for everything, is very heavy, and it's a big county, right? And that's part of it. But if you look at the crime statistics in Baltimore County, how many murders did they have last year? Do you know?
I thought it was under 100.
Yeah, but they're not far off of like Boston. Right, like an entire big city, which has a relatively low crime rate for a big city, has about the same number of murders as Baltimore.
Well, it's
County,
also population
right?
density. Baltimore City is down under 600,000.
Where
it used to be well over 1 million.
Yeah,
and a lot of the population loss from Baltimore City has gone
went
to
out to
Baltimore
the
County.
county.
So
That's well known that the problems in Baltimore County are the city's fault.
that is not what I was saying.
Crandall's he's running for office in like 1991 Baltimore County. He's like our pure, pristine county, free of outside influence.
I'm pretty sure my brethren Todd Crandall would agree with that.
Todd Crandall. How do you know Todd Crandall? Oh, okay.
But when Adam says some conservative stuff, we remind him that he's being a
There are
real
many Crandalls,
Todd
but this
Crandall.
one's mine. It's like Full Metal Jacket, you know. There are many Crandalls, but this one is mine.
You can't meet a liberal Todd Crandall.
You know.
You've never met
You're
a liberal
right.
Todd anyway.
Oh, I don't know about that. You don't think so?
Except
Look at
Todd.
Oppenheim. Oppenheim's to the left of Jesus.
Is there a left of Jesus?
There is. There is. I wish Oppenheim were here right now. You know.
He'd write an op-ed about it.
He would. I was at a establishment a couple years ago, and
An establishment.
yeah, I don't know who your sponsors are.
That
so I
sounds
don't
real
wanna,
shady.
You know. I was at Peabody Heights. I was at
Sure.
Peabody Heights Brewery,
Yeah.
and I was sitting there with Oppenheim, and Theroux Vignarajah walked out. I don't know if he's been a guest on your.
No.
Is he welcome here?
No.
Is he gonna call in?
We
Is
have a
that him?
stay away.
You stay away.
We have I have a peace order.
Did Sylvester Cox with
active
that? He was
peace
like
order.
permanent order,
Yeah, 100%.
good for the
It's been
next
extended
millennium.
so many times.
2055.
After
Let
he
me know.
lost his 7th election in a row, I can't be that close to a loser.
Oh man,
Wow.
You
I'm a
like to-
winner.
We do
Wow.
have a tremendously high win rate per guest on the show. I noticed that
I
again.
invite fucking winners.
Oh,
Yeah.
I see the sitting judges. I listened to that.
Yeah.
episode.
And
It's
also
beautiful.
Zeke. Just
Oh
Winners.
wow!
Yeah,
I
yeah,
feel like
winners.
I'm sitting in
Bro,
the hot seat
winners.
right now.
so,
Luke.
Luke.
Yeah, Luke.
Yeah.
He's
Oh,
close.
where is that? I
It's
didn't.
it's
It's
like
pretty close. Yeah, he's
squeeze your asshole
he's my
close.
councilman. You know, he's great in terms of customer service. There's nobody who's better.
that's not the only race that's close either. That one's close, and then the Paris Gray.
I didn't realize his district went all the way up where you think.
It shrank a little bit too. It used to be.
That's just because it was cold outside.
Oh! Ladies and gentlemen, this is brought to you by Under Armour thermal briefs. Make sure your junk is nice and warm, otherwise you're going to shrink. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, so I was sitting there with Oppenheim, and Theroux walked up and said hello, and then Oppenheim started grilling him about why he called these mandatory minimums in his cases over the years.
He deserved every
You
fucking
know, it was
ounce of that.
like Oppenheim just attacked him. It was beautiful. And it didn't matter what Theroux said. Like Oppenheim just
Todd doesn't give a shit.
Yeah.
That's what I like when Todd.
Todd
ran
was
for
like, well, hey, you
judge
just
and
were on the
scared
radio
shit
and-
out of everybody.
Yeah, you just on the radio and you said no mandatory minimums for drugs. So why in 2012 did you ask for a mandatory minimum sentence for this guy on August 14th? You know? He's like, well, that guy, Todd didn't care. Yeah. I love it. Oppenheim. I don't want to say I was critical, but when he ran for judge, right, I was a little surprised. I was a little puzzled because his policy positions were like General Assembly issues, right? And then I felt differently about it after the like if you have these concerns, run for General Assembly, right? House of Delegates, and then get on a committee.
You don't
and
run for
start working
judge
on it.
when you want to be a policymaker.
Right.
Yeah.
You run for judge when you want to be a judge. When you're making decisions in individual cases. And I kind of got it a little bit more after Wayne Jenkins and crew. Right?
I always thought he
After
did
the
it to
gun
make a
trace
point.
task
I never
force.
thought not that he didn't want to win.
Yeah.
I never thought he intended that he actually thought he was going to win. I always wondered whether he did it to
That's a good point. I
make
just,
to make a kerfuffle.
the judicial elections are so interesting, and it's such an inside baseball thing. Right?
The difference with Todd was that when Todd ran and he upset the Baltimore City bench, they had a very adverse reaction to it. But on top
They
of that,
did. I mean,
he was trying to get policy out. When Rob Daniels just ran against the Baltimore County judges, Rob wasn't doing it. Rob wanted to be a judge.
right.
But Rob, there was not this, if you know Todd Oppenheim, Todd was doing it to voice his opinion about a lot of things that he saw in the circuit court that he wanted to fix. And I'm not saying I agreed with all of them, but he was very policy driven, to your point.
Agreed.
And when Rob ran, it was just, I want to run and,
yeah. I
I'm
don't know Rob.
LGBTQ and you should vote for me because of that. And I think that fell on a lot of deaf ears, no different than the David Trone. Like, well, I'm not making you spend money to help me get elected, and it's my own money. And the message was lost on the voters. I don't think Rob Daniels is a bad human. I just think he had a bad message, and I'm comparing it to Todd when Todd ran, and that rubbed people a lot of it is timing, but that rubbed everyone the wrong way too.
I think the judicial elections, and I'm not an expert in it, but I go around the state when I do.
I don't think
post-conviction
anyone that is an expert in judicial elections
Well, I mean,
should find another career because you know what? It doesn't pay. It's you know who pays for them? Defense attorneys.
Yeah.
All these prosecutors who are getting their fucking deals and winning everything in fucking court, they don't donate shit to judicial elections. That's the biggest farce out of all of this. It's like I've never seen a prosecutor at a fucking judicial fundraiser in my life. Just give me my postponement.
Oh man, yeah.
I'm having fun. I'm having fun.
The officer's on call.
But all the prosecutors get all the fuck. I'm like, come on, man. I never seen a prosecutor give any judge money.
You know. No.
That sounds horrible, but it's the truth.
It's true.
It is the
It's true.
underbelly
It's
of
true.
what we do.
But it seems like with the elections, you get like Prince George's County has this, right? I mean, you grew up there.
I did.
They have.
It's pronounced PG County. Here, you're not allowed to say Prince George's. I would go the opposite.
Oh, I thought you're not allowed to say PG.
No, here you say PG is a safe space.
You can't go to Prince George's County
When
and
we
say
cut,
PG
I
County.
went, no, PG County.
Oh man, if you're in circuit court in PG County, and the record's on, you cannot say.
Yeah,
PG
I would
County.
love to get found in contempt where I grew up. I clerked for Judge Missouri out there, and I remember him saying that, and he was like,
He's
"You
like,
can't
"Don't
say
ever
PG.
say it."
You can't say PG." And I was like, "Aren't you from North Carolina?" And he's like, "Excuse me." And I was like, "It's pronounced Prince George's." I was like, "Can I say gorgeous
George's
Prince
County.
George?
Prince
Can I
George's
say
County.
gorgeous Prince George's?"
Gorgeous Prince. They have a lake.
It's man-made.
That's the nicest
And
part.
that's because
man-made.
all lakes in Maryland are man-made.
Exactly.
That's true. I like going to Upper Marlboro.
No,
I
you don't.
do.
Now you're a
I
fucking
do.
liar. We're about to
I
cut
do.
this shit short.
I do. I like a couple things. I like the Wegmans on the way there and back. I do. Yeah.
This is the.
It's not
traveling
actually
lawyer
Upper Marlboro that
experience.
you like. It's just the things on the way.
I
to
like
and
the I
from.
like the Wegmans. I really like the
There's
Amish
a really
market
good Jamaican
too.
place on the way.
I like
too.
the Amish market.
Upper Marlboro is the only place in my life that I've ever driven to where it is an hour further than I feel like it should be.
Agreed.
Like, the whole time
Agreed.
there, I'm like, I'm almost there, but yet I'm not.
Well, it's this.
That's how
tiny
I feel
town.
about Havre de Grace or Cecil County. Harford County. I feel
Time
the
does
same
go.
way.
Time goes backwards. Yeah. It's an enormous courthouse, right? Enormous county executive, administrative complex, and then no place to eat lunch.
Lido's Pizza.
Well, yeah, I mean, if
It's
you need
Lido's.
sustenance, you can go to Lido's. But nobody's like, I'm just gonna hang out. We finished court. Let's go to Lido's.
That's the
Let's
way
get
it
that
should
sweet
be.
tomato sauce
You know
designed for children and drunk college students.
First of all, you'd be cooler if you did, as a big Lido's fan.
What is
You
up
could
with
go get some
Maryland and the
toasted-
chains?
Toasted ravioli, man.
Well, those are delicious, but Lido's. There was one in Charles Village when it closed. That was a good Lido's.
Yeah, up by by Hopkins on 30.
Yeah, Maryland does not have great local chains. I mean, what else do we have?
God, Pennsylvania people. Just to get back to your roots for a second,
Sheets.
Pennsylvania people are like
Is like a chain restaurant.
their fried chicken is not bad.
Where did you grow up, Crandall?
North Carolina.
Really? You didn't jump to Judge Missouri's defense. Like,
No.
Tar Heel State, So how long did it take you to suppress your accent? What sort of steps did you take?
Methadone.
2 weeks of methadone.
Yeah.
It comes out when I go home after a couple of soda pops.
A couple natty lights.
So you like drink natty in the truck bed. You sound like you're you're on the country music tip.
He prefers Applebee's.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Yeah, date
Or
night.
Chili's.
Yeah, Bojangles. Oh man, North Carolina has some good. They have some good local.
I thought you
stuff.
pronounced it Bohongales.
Where in North Carolina? Where in North Carolina?
Durham.
Okay.
You're not interviewing him. You're on our podcast.
Wait,
what are you doing, Joe Rogan?
I love this. No one's ever asked me any questions.
Wait, I don't understand that this isn't normal. that you
No, it
would
just
ask-
feels like speed dating.
I just feel I can't ask Crandall where he's from. This
I mean,
is
you can,
strange.
but let's fuck already.
You're like,
Let's
there are
go.
no rules. You can say whatever you want. It's totally fine. Or don't ask Crandall where he's from.
Yeah.
You
It's
know?
like when I start talking about my cases, like everybody, like Jeremy's eyes.
They just leave.
Kurt falls asleep.
They just leave.
Kurt just
Yeah.
plays on his phone. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
There was the one
that's
time
good
he
times.
actually, I think, fell asleep.
Yeah. Yeah. But you should go to the Amish market if you haven't been. Oh, it's terrific. I've scheduled cases because I think it's only open, Tuesday? No,
Yeah.
Thursday,
Thursday
and
and
Friday.
Friday,
Yeah.
yeah.
You've been.
Yeah, I've been there.
Oh, man.
He's actually Mennonite.
False.
He's
Are you?
full Mennonite.
How's your German? We'll check,
Jawohl.
we'll check them
Natürlich.
out. Excellent. Hier wird Deutsch gesprochen.
Yeah, your papers.
Die deutsche Sprache gepflegt.
This is crazy. You're speaking German on the podcast and Kurt's not here.
Ich habe
Yeah.
zu viel verloren.
Oh yeah. Well, that was. I think what you meant to say is you forgot a lot.
Yes.
Yeah. You just said I lost so much.
I mean,
Is
isn't
that
that the same
verloren?
thing?
Isn't that forgotten?
Oh,
Oh, vergessen?
Yeah.
Vergessen.
Why do
Yeah,
you
verloren.
speak German?
Yeah. Well, lost a lot is also maybe appropriate too. Yeah.
Yeah, but almost like I lost so much in the war.
Brick
I lost
by
so
brick.
much- lost so much in the war. You know. It helps when you go to the Mennonite stands.
You're full of sorpresas, man.
That's why. That's why I learned it. Just so when I go to Prince George's County on a Thursday,
You can speak German.
I can be like, "Hey, can I get a little?"
All right, just get
extra-
back to cross-examining
little
Crandall.
bacon? Yeah, I have the German market cornered, man. Cornered. Yeah. How did you get into immigration, Crandall? That's such a niche practice. Do you feel like? How do you? I feel like a lot of things.
We have a new Kurt. Hey, new Kurt.
Well, no, it's just there's only one Kurt at a time, right? So like he's gone. And I'm here.
I mean, you're speaking
I'm
German
like a
and you're-
new Kurt. Like he's gone, right? It's like the king is dead. Long live the king. Like he's gone.
It's like
He's listening right now, and he's like, "What happened?"
Who was the guy that replaced?
Kurt? Don't come back.
Who was the guy that
Actually, no, you come
replaced
Sunday.
Batman after
Get your
Bane
shit.
broke his back and became like Nightwing or whatever?
Oh yeah,
God bless him.
We got
That's-
Audit
that's-
Johnston here. Audit Johnston. Audit
Audie.
Johnston, everybody.
Oh,
Audit
man.
Johnston. Audit
I
Johnston.
could get into that.
Yeah. Tell us what you like to play,
I could
Audit
get
Johnston.
into that. Kurt, yeah. How's Kurt doing?
He's dead.
He's
apparently.
dead. Yeah.
What's he up to? Just his,
R.I.P. Kurt. R.I.P. Curtis Bay.
well, I mean, he the soul as a Presbyterian, the soul lives, right? You know, so he's still alive in that sense.
We're gonna
Just
pull one
his-
out for
his
our
body
homie Kurt.
is-
Pull one out for him.
Yeah, what's the Presbyterian pour out? Is it like
I think it's the same. Yeah, it's got to be.
He's actually
right.
listening right now. He has a question for you.
would you pour out? Yeah, that'd be great if you called. Did people call in?
Audit Johnston has a question for you, but it's in German.
We haven't talked about that.
He says,
either.
what did it cause for you to lose so much?
Yeah. So you guys are used to sort of having to kick in a little bit. You think for judicial elections, that's just part of having a medium-sized law firm. Excuse me, AM 4000.
I mean, that's what we
or
all do.
whatever.
Yeah.
You know, AM 5000.
It wasn't meant to be offensive. It's not even offensive towards the judges. It's just funny to me because prosecutors, for the
I
most
agree. I don't
part,
think it's offensive.
aren't political. They have no fucking clue what's going on about the politics of any of their job. And then defense attorneys are on the outside being like, we're going to all the fundraisers. We're helping keep your boss elected. We're helping getting the judges elected. And prosecutors just
I think
thumb up
it's-
their ass.
yeah, I think
which I'm not
it's-
saying is a complete bad thing. I just wish sometimes they were a little bit more aware
You know,
of the
I'm
politics.
mixed on the whole thing because it is. If you want to talk about democracy, right? Like you have to run for election, right? And there's some responsibility to the voters. And if somebody wants to run, they can just run. If they're a lawyer, they can file and run, right? But in those counties where I feel like some counties never have a challenge, right? Baltimore County's had some recently, but they've been relatively.
Howard County's had 2 in a row.
You know, yeah,
And so is Prince George's County.
yeah, and Prince George's routinely. has
And the
challenges.
judge who just ran, all the other judges teamed up against, probably rightfully, and she got kicked off the bench.
But why do we? I mean, but it sort of begs the question, though. Like, why are judges running in the first place? I mean, at some point along the way, we made this policy decision in Maryland that said
Elected versus appointed.
Yeah.
we get appointed first, and then you have to run. It's just so.
Or
weird.
you can run, or you can just
You can
run,
just run.
right?
But it's a weird sort of.
I think they were looking for some sort of trapdoor to get rid of people. And I mean, that I don't know any other better way to explain it.
I think that it evolved from everybody running for everything, right?
Well, because
To
you run
this
for school
system
board.
now,
Yeah,
yeah.
PG, they appoint half the school board. You run for the rest.
Yeah.
In most places, you run for
No one
everything.
looking at those ballots. Like no one knows.
Nobody knows. No.
I mean, in
No.
Baltimore City, the ballot on Tuesday, there were what 7 names.
Right.
It's like, choose 7.
Yeah,
Well,
but
even-
but in other states in the South, you run for appellate court. I mean, even
Yeah.
here, that you end up on the ballot.
Retention. Yeah.
But down, I mean, I don't want to go a pelican brief on you, but like the whole point of that movie and in the South was the idea of large law firms trying to figure out who was going to get on the bench and who they could put on the bench in order to get, big decisions on appeals on giant cases. I mean, that was the entire theory behind that case. And I don't think, frankly, I know that it's a movie, but it's like not that far off.
well, and they're plaintiffs firms.
If you're
right? 'Cause
playing
I don't think
long
the defense
game.
firms care. They're billing either way. Not to
Yeah.
be
No.
mercenary about
No,
it.
you're.
don't
I mean,
think
it's
they give
not
a fuck.
mercenary. That's what 100% what it is.
Yeah.
But if you are a massive firm, a Sidley
Right.
Austin Brown and Wood, or a Hogan Lovell, if you're a DC firm and you know you have something coming down the pike in 5 or 6 years, and you have the political sway to influence who gets elected, so that 5 or 6 years down the road, when a big decision is coming your way, I mean, that shit is what happens. I mean, that's not being conspiratorial. That's
no, I
just
don't think so at
being
all. I think people get groomed, right, for those positions.
100%.
Right.
In Baltimore, it's just a little bit different because we have less influence over who gets appointed here, but we're all everyone is asked to pitch in when they run. I mean, in Baltimore County, which we did support all 4 of them, and I really loved all 4 of them. I do. I mean, James Rhodes has been an absolute fantastic judge. Patty DeMayo. I mean, all of them have. But I will say, you know, it was very interesting to watch. Everyone kind of came together to be like, no, we don't want Rob. And I mean, there were tons of lawyers out there campaigning for all of them.
That shouldn't be necessarily surprising either. And I know you've heard my story before, but my introduction to sort of the legal world of Baltimore County, and I'm sure it's the same in Baltimore City, but it's not in Baltimore County. My first job out of law school was working for a small immigration firm.
Marion Berlin,
right down the street.
I know where you're from and all that shit. I'm just asking the questions because we're supposed to do that.
Which I appreciate.
Who else worked there at the time?
So I'll get there.
What's his name?
Berlin took me to Joe Murtha's Crab Feast in whatever fucking crab house in Baltimore County. I don't even know that I've been to Baltimore County at this point in my.
You mean Canada?
You didn't know?
Yeah, north of North Avenue. But I get there and it's judges and prosecutors and defense attorneys and civil attorneys and everybody, drinking together and eating together. And it was like, this is how the fucking sausage actually gets made.
And it's good for everyone that's there. I mean, to sit down and let their hair down a little bit.
That's why we were there. I mean, we didn't have any necessarily like skin in that game as immigration attorneys, but knowing the judges on, if we have a conflict of post-conviction or, being in the mix on that was valuable.
I think what people on the outside don't realize sometimes is the inside baseball stuff is actually reasonably democratic, right?
Yeah. Oh,
so
I
if
100%
you
agree
if you're
with
a
that.
new lawyer and you just moved to Baltimore County and you're practicing there and you want to get involved in the bar association, like you just start showing up, right? And within a couple of years, like you'll be in a leadership position. They need people. They need help. Same thing in every county that you're in, right?
Yeah.
And so you can access those things, right? I think what's interesting is being in private practice now, so about 2.5 years.
Which is 12 in dog
clients-
years.
And 12 in dog years, yeah. What kind of dog? I think it's a little different. Big dog, small
Shepherd.
dog.
It's a hip dysplasia.
Shepherd.
Hip
It's
dysplasia.
King Charles.
You're like a Kanye Corso in this motherfucker.
Yeah, I think clients really assume that everything's worked out before you even get to the courthouse, right? That you've talked to the judge, the prosecutor talked to the judge, even if you don't tell them, if you're not supposed to tell them, that you know exactly what's going to happen. You might have a really good sense just from your own experience with that judge or that type of case or that prosecutor, but that's the, there's this illusion that they're paying, for very specific access. Right.
Oh my God, yeah.
And I think there are a lot of
lawyers that say, "Oh, I play
yeah.
golf with the judge," and I'm like, "The fuck, that's gonna buy you."
Well, and that's where I was going. A good chunk of the bar, they don't just feed into it. That's where they think they add value, right? And I love it when somebody says, "Well, I went to law school with a judge." You're like, "Well, everybody. I mean, like everybody has to go to law school."
I'm just trying to get a
everybody went to
postponement
like the
when I
same
need
4 or
one.
5
Yeah,
law schools.
I'm literally just trying to get a postponement when I need one.
And like, yeah. So I think and it's unfortunate because you have people who are not great at picking lawyers, right? That's the one thing that I'm shocked by continually, right? That you have relatively sophisticated people who are good at all sorts of other things, right? And then I see it with post-conviction cases. I mean, there's somebody in each county, and there's more than one person, right? But there's somebody in each county you call for that type of problem, right? So if you're in Montgomery County and you have a child abuse case, right? Like, who you're going to call.
Do you?
Yeah.
You beat your kids that frequently? I mean, you got so specific. Like,
I did.
If you
I
were like,
did.
if you're, for instance, Baltimore County, the
you're
easiest one, if it's child pornography,
If
like, Charlie Wagner's showing up with his trunk full of Cuban cigars, like that that is a little bit more.
Well, God bless him, but
Yeah, I didn't say he was
God
good.
bless
I
him.
just said that's who they call.
No,
Like,
sometimes you go to Jimmy Cone and things just go south.
Too many
You know?
sprinkles.
Yeah,
Too
you're
many
like, no. And then you gotta call somebody. No, I think you meet people who are not great, who great at a lot of things, not great at picking lawyers, right? And the price differential is not really that much, right? It's not that if you pay a ton more, you get a lot better representation.
Whoa, that's not true.
I'm talking
You
about
pay me more money.
No, I'm talking about you can pay the wrong lawyer a lot.
Oh,
of money,
I'm kidding. Yeah, I know.
right?
I'm kidding.
And the wrong lawyer is not necessarily cheaper. And I also think I was thinking about this driving here. You talk about juvenile, right? A lot of people think juvenile, cases. Okay, well, no consequences, right? Maybe you'll be out of the home for a bit. You get probation. There are lifelong consequences, right? One example in Maryland is you can't have a firearm, right, until you're 30, depending on what the juvenile, adjudication is, right? And there's some other things surrounding that get a little bit more complicated. People get on the sex offender registry for things that happen when they're juveniles,
Mm-hmm.
Well, we were
And
talking about this before we went on too, right? With the new bill.
can't go to school if you're on the juvenile sex offender registry. Yeah, and those are pretty serious cases, and I understand the policy issues behind it, but to suggest that it's something where you don't need to worry about getting a lawyer, you don't need to worry so much about what counts called, right, or what the sanction is, or not sanction, but the disposition, right?
Paying attention. Some
Yeah.
people think it's like a free swing.
Right, and I think to the extent that somebody's listening to this and they're thinking, do I hire a lawyer? What do I do? That first offense, and I think you would agree with me on this, that's where we, I think, as private criminal defense attorneys can make the most difference for people.
I agree.
I mean, if you come to me, and I've got, got a murder case in Prince George's in September. We're going to be there for a long time, a couple weeks. Obviously that's very important to that client, and we're working hard to get him a great result. But that person who comes in who's no criminal record at all, right? And, if you handle things well and you try to be creative about it and be on top of it, maybe they get a stat, maybe that stat's a null pros, right? It's expunged, shoplifting case, that sort of thing. Compared to getting that PBJ, maybe getting the judge who says, hey, your life's kind of a mess. You would benefit from some supervised probation, right? And then things go south. Like, that's where I think for people, for a lot of people, you can make the most difference. That first sort of contact with the system. That DUI where maybe somebody completes treatment, things are going really well. It's an unsupervised probation, right?
Or I think you're even fast forwarding a little farther than I would,
I am.
which
I
is
wanna
maybe
apologize for that.
getting the person into treatment, or
Oh, yeah.
and recommending a good treatment place.
Yeah,
There are
yeah.
a lot of lawyers I see that honestly just don't give a fuck, and they're like, oh, just go to this place where it's bad treatment, and so you have somebody that pretty obviously has an alcohol problem, and I think a lot of on our end, it's like, oh, I have people that make that assumption, like, oh, you just want to make money, you just do this, but it's also like, no, we spend a lot of time doing some life coaching shit.
Absolutely.
That we don't have to do, and if you're good at it, it's not just to get a better result. It's also because I don't necessarily want to see you again.
No.
Than when you come in for fucking killing somebody on a DUI manslaughter. And so there is this idea of getting people into anger management, or getting some people some counseling, or getting people some help. I had a client yesterday who came in, speaking of no names, who I had helped out as a juvenile, and I had worked really hard for over a 2-year period to help them fix their situation. And then they backslid, and we came in, and we sat down with mom and talked about how to try to ensure that it doesn't continue to happen. And that's a lot of, I'm not saying that's frequent, but we do a lot of that. Or you'll talk to, Adam today, we talked to somebody who were helping one of Adam's former clients, and Adam's like, the person doesn't want to go into treatment. And me and Kurt have talked to her. Adam's like, do I need to fucking call? Do I need to get on the phone? And there's a lot of that shit. Not to sound like we're fucking superheroes, but there's a lot of that shit when people make the joke to me about, you're just making money. Yeah, I make good fucking money, but it's also because 3 of us had to get on the phone with somebody just to get somebody to go to fucking treatment. Because and it's not because we want our case dismissed. It's because you're a good lawyer because you actually give a fuck about your client.
Yeah.
And that's the difference about the first time shit. It's not just like, I want to do a good job. It's like, because I give a fuck about what I'm doing, I'm trying to get a good result, and I'm actually trying to fucking help the person.
Yeah.
Sometimes helping the person and being a good lawyer for the client means saying you need to go talk to someone else.
Yeah.
Right? And to your point about people being bad at picking lawyers, a lot of times they're being sold a bill of goods by a lawyer who has no business taking on that case.
One lawyer specifically whose office is not far from us, who we inherit from clients from all the time, who does a lot of advertising but
You see it
is
a
an
ton in
idiot.
Immigration too, with guys who, you know, they dabble. I dabble in immigration. Like that's problematic. You should probably be just not taking.
Yeah, like I
those
dabble
cases.
in MedMal. Yeah.
Or if I, you know, if it's a different jurisdiction, someone calls me their loved one is locked up in Stewart, Georgia. I'm like, find somebody. Let's
Yeah.
find you somebody local who knows what those judges want, knows what they, you know, is going to happen, knows those even though it's the same practice,
Mhm.
so to speak. You want, you know, as a good lawyer wanting a good outcome for that client, sometimes that better outcome comes from a different lawyer. Frankly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
agreed.
absolutely. I think what's interesting with the felony cases, in Maryland at least, is the higher tier the case, the more similar it is across the state, right? So if you went to Cumberland, right? If you had a homicide case in Cumberland, it's going to look a lot like a homicide case in Howard County, right? Might be some differences, but you can develop that relationship over the life of the case with the judges assigned with the prosecutor. If you went to Cumberland, it's a second DUI, right? The local person there knows exactly what that judge is looking for, right? And so those are the cases that I think, you know, I'll refer out, right? If it's a higher tier case, then you think, okay, maybe I can,
The more
you know,
nuanced stuff.
add some value to it, right? It's sort of more of a specialized practice.
Well, because who you are matters less.
right,
Because the judge ain't doing you a favor on a fucking murder.
exactly. Yeah, it's first degree rape case. It's
Yeah,
you know
you're
you're going
trying
to
to
try
find-
it.
yeah, you're trying
Looks the
to
same.
claim it.
We're, you know, same issues if you're in Frederick County, Howard County, whatnot. I think too, what's interesting with our profession is, especially in Maryland, right? One, there are no. I mean, this shocks people, right? There are no CLEs required, continuing legal education, right? You don't need to do anything. I mean, a lot of people do. Most
No,
of us
it's
do.
great. We don't have to be educated.
Yeah,
Re-educated.
and then there's no subspecialty or specialty certification either, right? So if I
That's also
decide,
great.
it's great. If I decide tomorrow I want to open 1-800-immigration,
I think you
or
should,
whatever,
yeah.
then I just take Crandall's intellectual property off of the website,
I could just say, "Are you
Change
getting
it.
deported? Call Audie Johnston."
change it a little bit. Next thing you know, the phone's ringing off the hook. Get my Google local services ads.
Are you
up.
being sent back to Canada?
We're done. I actually had a call from a Canadian recently.
Fuck the Maple Leafs.
That was not the content of the call.
Oh, really? Are you sure?
No.
I'm sorry. Was it fuck the Canucks?
Yeah. So I think it's interesting if you think about medicine, right? It's a lot different, you know. But you know exactly what somebody's specialty is when you look at the website.
I mean,
you know?
PAs have to take. My mom's a PA. She has to take
Yeah.
recertification. I
My
mean,
mom's
it's-
in PA. Is that the same thing? Or is that
It's
different?
exactly.
It's very,
Vancouver.
very
I barely
close.
knew it. No. Bringing it
My
back-
mom's probably seeing a PA in PA.
There we go.
Um,
She's like, he told me it was a Dutch oven. It cured everything.
Dutch oven don't knock until you've tried it. Got that delicious, you know,
Mm.
delicious food. Yeah, and I wonder if we, you know, as a profession, right, if you wanted to ensure quality, right, so that when people call someone and they say, what do you do? I'm a criminal defense lawyer, that you have some sort of idea that the person has special training or expertise or something like that. Right.
No, we can
Yeah.
say I focus on
I
it.
focus.
Look, it's the biggest benefit to lawyers and it's the biggest disadvantage to the client. And I'm
Yeah.
not so sure
It's
it's
a great way to put
actually
it.
the advantage to the lawyers that we think it is. But if you said to me, you have to get 10 hours a year, and so I got to go to like a cool advanced DUI training or some narcotic stuff. I mean,
So if you
and
look at,
say it, Crandall, say it. Eldridge is hungover. And we need some pancakes and some bacon.
if you look at
Every year, man. I'm like,
Well-
I say I'm going to go, and then
you know, if we were talking about civility and sort of lawyers who do different things, but you know, should be interacting, not interacting. CLE, as much as I would hate to, you know, have to add that to my calendar, if you look at other states that require it, if you require 12 whatever hours, right,
it's really not that
they're
much.
making everybody go to these things that are really great opportunities to meet other people, right? They're going out of state, you know, not just Ocean City, but you have a lot of opportunities.
Meanwhile, I'm
right?
going to MSBA, hanging out with Lydia Lawless, the former head of the Attorney Grievance Commission, while she's making fun of my pants that have toddler tabs on them. That's how I'm spending my CLE time.
feel like maybe you could focus more.
Really? Says my
Yeah.
babysitter.
The tabs. Yeah. You know, we're getting into babysitting and life coaching. Life coaching.
DJS has taught you well.
Yeah.
Is this the choice program? Is this
Yeah.
choice mentoring?
Choice now. Well, and it's interesting you mentioned choice because part of the system is so much of the work is done by outside contractors too, right? So, and that's a good thing, right? There's some great programs that do a lot of good work, but it also is the way all the funding's set up, right? So it comes in and it goes out to Roca and it goes out to Choice, and it's going to keep going out, right? They have a vested interest in continuing that money, and so, you know, you provide fewer and fewer services, you know, to the extent that you do directly, and it's done through contractors. Some of whom are great, some of whom aren't great.
Can I
Right?
ask you some direct questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
As a result of, most of the people I think that listen are attorneys.
Who listens? Is there anyone listening?
There's so many people listening right now.
Like when I know some of those people, like am I going to go to the
Yes.
grocery store tomorrow and somebody will be like, man, Johnston, I didn't even run lawyers.
Gotta
That's
recognize your
awesome.
voice. Yeah, from the sex
That's
line.
awesome. Yeah.
So,
when I go to Save a Lot, is somebody be like,
empuja
"Johnston,
dos.
what's
Empuja
up?"
dos para hablar con James
You know?
Johnston.
Yeah, that's awesome.
The
Good
the
old
bill
Win Dixie.
por el Dutch oven.
Yeah.
So, do you think, I'm going to just very direct questions. You know, there was a lot of backlash.
It's not
after
direct when
the-
you say it's going to be direct. Just come, let's go.
Well,
Backlash.
I can't wait. You're just like,
Backwash.
don't tell me when you're going to. Okay. So, with the juvenile bill that passed a couple years ago that just got refit and the
Yes.
backlash that ensued, was any of that anticipated?
Yes.
Okay. Did the legislature simply not listen when they passed it the first time?
No.
What would you
It's a lightning round. Yes.
do you think we fixed it with the changes to the juvenile bill, to the juvenile laws, by going back and giving DJS less discretion once again, by giving prosecutors more discretion in what to charge, by changing some of the age crimes? Do you think in sliding backwards a bit that we have fixed some of the problems with the bill?
So it's not fixing. It's not like fixing a car, right? We said, okay, your car runs, right? Like there are these criteria and it meets those criteria, right? Your brakes work and your engine works and all of that. They're just choices that you're making. They're policy choices. So the legislature decided a few years ago, and I was part of that effort when I worked at DJS, right? And then took a couple sessions to kind of make it through. But the question is, what do you do, say, with 10, 11, 12-year-olds, right, who were charged with, you know, concerning but not super serious problems?
That's what
right?
changed, right? So lightning round, that's what changed. We
Yeah.
stopped charging people of that
Yeah.
age, and were there discussions before the law changed again this year where people in rooms that you're sitting in said, hey guys, maybe this isn't a great fucking idea?
I think those conversations happen throughout the legislative cycle, right? I wasn't involved really much at all with the bill this
But
year.
your ears to
right?
the ground.
Yeah, I think even if you have a really small number of people impacted by something, right, you can have something in a bill that has an outsized profile, right? And what happens to 10 and 11-year-olds is that, right? There aren't a lot of them, right? But it's something that you know, you think about punishment.
All you need
right?
is one to be on the news, and it's a whole lot of fucking
Yeah.
noise, a la squeegee
right.
motor.
So you have lots of noise about certain areas, and really they're choices that I think there was a Juvenile Justice Reform Council a couple years ago, and the bill came out of that, right? One thing that wasn't addressed ever, right, to sort of loop around and answer the question, when I say ever, it was a huge topic of discussion, lots and lots of back and forth.
Give us
Scott
the inside baseball.
Schellenberger, I'm sorry?
Give us the inside baseball, baby.
Juveniles in adult court, right? So that's been an issue. I mean, I started doing that work like 15 years ago. And the list of offenses that are excluded today from juvenile court, right, starting with misdemeanor handgun possession, first degree assault, you know, then robbery, armed robbery, kind of up from that. It's the same list, right? And there have been discussions, bills, work groups, task forces, everything over the years to try to right-size that list a little bit. And there's been no movement at all.
I had heard in
No
others.
movement at
I know in other states they have it. In Maryland, I think the discussion was short-lived about creating this weird middle ground where you're not an adult, but you're not a juvenile. And then can we deal with some of these more serious offenses?
Sure.
But once again, to your point, and this is where we started the conversation, that if the circuit court judges feel, and this is what I hate about the policy statement stuff, if circuit court judges feel there's nowhere for me to send you, so you're not going to get any services, and the staff secure placement is bullshit, then it doesn't matter who the fuck you are, because I don't like what they're doing over there at DJS. You know, it's like the friend. It sound, and this is so stupid, it's like the friend my parents didn't want me to hang out with. Like, it didn't matter that he wasn't actually a bad influence on me, that like I was 100% in with what he was doing. But like, they were like, oh no, we just don't want you to hang out with him. And that's the way I get, that's the arguments I'm hearing in court for DJS. It doesn't, the kid, at the last 4 hearings, with the exception of one, wasn't about the kid. And I went the fuck off.
Yeah.
You know, because I'm like, you're not making about the kid. I didn't hear anything that you've said about the kid. It's just all about how much you hate DJS. And that's cool. But the kid's sitting right next to me, and that's not the kid's fault.
So you want to talk inside baseball? You want to talk about what we have and what we don't have? Great questions.
So what changes? Give me the quick, what the fuck would you change?
So I think you need to have a conversation about options that are in between adult and juvenile, right? And you know, the advocacy community and the public defender's office counts in that, ACLU, lots of other organizations who are very powerful in Maryland, lots of staff, lots of influence, and really mean well, right? But they see Maryland, and that's part of the juvenile justice reform, you know, sort of agenda. We want to get out in front of these issues. We want to be the state that did the most, right? And if we're not there yet, we want to catch up, right? We don't want these other states.
But that takes money.
We don't want these other states to be ahead of us. Well, a lot of the issues that you're talking about, like probation length, don't really cost money, right? I mean, a lot of the decisions that were made with the juvenile justice reform package a couple of years ago,
6 months probation for every single misdemeanor.
They're trying to take discretion away from judges too. Right?
And that's my point.
When you have a system and you know, there's a policy reason for that, right? Because it's expensive to keep the kid on probation, the, you know, diminishing returns, et cetera.
If you don't get it in 6 months, you're not going to get it ever.
So I understand all of that. I mean, I was there for those meetings, right? A lot of us were. But you're also suggesting, and this is maybe what the judges are hearing, we're being constrained. So if we have this young person under supervision, right, what we can do with them is limited. And if we're limited, then we don't want to take what we perceive as a risk.
Felony supervision is 1 year, right? Unless they need more services, and then it can be extended. And judges are going, well, hold on, you want me to transfer this attempted murder back to juvenile, where the most they're going to get is community supervision for a year. And I feel like that, and that's why I'm asking that, the hand wringing that I'm seeing, is it responsive to the hand tying that they feel? And I didn't realize that.
Yeah, you're making great points. And so
we're done.
I was talking about Adam. I'm sorry.
I mean, he took his glasses off. I thought things were getting hot in here.
I think what you need to do for those kids who are in a situation where if they're not transferred, right, they're looking at a mandatory penalty, although it may not be mandatory, you know, with children now. I mean, there's some discretion there. But they're looking at a prison sentence, right? They're looking at a felony
going to
conviction.
Patuxent,
Or maybe not, right? They may not be going to Patuxent, probably not. Unless their sentence is long enough, right? So they're looking at going to just general population DOC right after they turn 18 and all the problems associated with that. You don't have a heavy touch anymore in DJS that the judges think is reasonably available, right? That program where you have 9 months, 12 months, 18 months out of home.
Which is a complete disservice to the kids.
I agree. And
now it dropped down from 6 months to 3 or 4 months. And
if you think about options that some other states may have available that we don't, right? We don't have any. Patuxent's sort of a youth, you know, environment in a way, right? They have, I mean, when I say that, they have a youthful offender program, right, within an adult prison. But most of the people there are in their 20s, right? By the time you get processed.
Could we be learning something by, we've had a couple people that you and I both know go to like the Hershey High School. Like, should we be learning something by saying we're not spending enough money? Is there, and I guess that's, are we allocating enough money to create these better programs that in the long run,
here's the question,
educate our children, provide safer environments when they're detained, incentivize people to work in this field?
Here's the question. Do you think if you spend enough money and you have the right people, that you can create a state-run or privately run detention and treatment facility that's going to change kids' lives? Do you think you can do that?
If it involves education, I do.
Do you think you can do that?
If it
Because I
involves
don't think
education.
right now that the state, right, and I'm talking about DJS and the state government generally, think that they can do that, right?
Look how many iterations with Patuxent they went through, whether it was a Goucher program, Maryland, getting to Georgetown. I think when you bring attention and public attention to those Patuxent is not run perfectly. I'm not here to advocate that they are, but when you
Go in
can
there Thursday.
bring statewide university programs to some of these facilities, and you do the things that reduce recidivism in a very real way, like education, vocational training, and not sit people in front of a television, or put them in isolation and make mental health worse. Provide mental health services, trauma-focused therapy, family-based therapy. When we actually invest in these things, I am a complete believer in those things. And I didn't work at DJS, so maybe I'm fucking naive.
Then you need that in DJS, right? If you want to win that transfer case with a kid who would otherwise be going to prison, right? You need a judge to think there's a state-operated or maybe privately operated, right, facility that's here, right, Maryland, or maybe it's nearby, that will take this kid. Because if DGS runs the facility, they can put the kid in. There's no application process. Right? I mean, there is, but they make that decision, right? Where the judge knows that kid's going to be out of home and going to leave, right, with some sort of skill, right? High school diploma, trade, a period away from a probably chaotic environment, right? Some sort of transition back into the community, right? If judges thought that was available, right, on like a
I wouldn't be
9 to
hearing their
18
policy
basis.
statements. And I don't blame it for them because they're hearing it every day.
Yeah.
But what I hear you really saying is, Jeremy, in an effort to reduce the number of juveniles held, we've really cut off our nose to spite our face, because now, as a result of reducing the availability, we're affecting the amenability.
I think that we have a lack of programming. And for those kids who are at that higher tier of needs, there's a limited amount of programming. It's not zero.
We're so fucking highbrow right now.
But there's a limited amount of programming that's available. And if you're a judge who's skeptical to begin with, and you imagine in your mind's eye that the ideal solution is there's a program in Carroll County that's called this, program, and here are the staff, and it's run by the state, and there's the, administrator who's going to come in and tell you about it, right? We don't have that. Right. I mean, you have some facilities, Victor.
No, we fucking don't,
right?
dude. And everyone that's coming up to testify right now is saying that there's 3 to 4 months. I mean, yes.
So the length of stay, they have been, but it's part of a national trend, right? So if you're a juvenile services agency, it doesn't matter if you're Maryland, Virginia, California, whatever. You look at length of stay. You want to get that down, right? You say, well, we're going to provide treatment, but we want to do it in the quickest period we can. We want to do that in the community, right? Because a lot of kids went out of home, and they didn't really need to. They could get those services.
But judges don't give a shit. Judges aren't hearing that testimony, and DJS people that are showing up to court are not prepared to present that testimony. So all they're hearing is, oh, it used to be 4 to 6 months, or 6 to 8 months, or 8 to 12 months, and now it's 3 to 4 months. And then when you say why, they give you this blank fucking stare.
DJS is performing better by their own metrics when they have fewer people there, right? So their goal, right, is to serve the kids that the courts send there. But they want those kids to be done with treatment as quickly as they can, done with probation successfully, right? It's not a game where keeping that number higher, either the total number of kids or the length of stay for any individual kid, benefits them, right? I mean, the system is incredibly shrunk compared to what it
doesn't.
used to be.
It's just when you have this stuff, the ugly shit that we deal with. People
Right.
like when you and I get phone calls, I'm not getting brought in for a trespass, right? So
Right.
when it's attempted murder and then you're discussing the nationwide trend, most judges, most of which didn't practice juvenile, right? So
Right.
their experience is solely from a judiciary perspective. They're not going to be cool with 3 to 4 months
I agree.
being sufficient.
And then we don't have
That's what I don't think anybody fucking thought of. Like that, and I know that's an assumption I'm making, which is why I'm trying to get into these rooms that you were in. But when we discuss legislation on the show, that's kind of where I'm
It
stuck.
absolutely was something that people are talking about.
You're a
while
liar.
all of this is happening.
He's a liar.
Absolutely. Right. Absolutely.
So do you anticipate seeing maybe a rollback or like going back to?
No.
Or offering elongated services or educating their staff better when they testify about why these programs exist in a shorter duration and why that is based on actual data as opposed to what it sounds like, which is like with 8505, 8507 inpatient drug treatment being reduced from 6 months to 90 days because of cost, not because of efficacy.
So I don't see a rollback, right? But when you say that, when you ask, did people know about this, right? I mean, absolutely, right? It's been something, the idea that's been on people's minds, the idea that as you discuss the problems in facilities, right, and the poor conditions in facilities, and you reduce the number of facilities and the types of facilities and the bed space, that those kids who are at that higher tier, right, that first degree assault kid who's going to get 3 years DOC or maybe go to juvenile, right, on a plea, that you're reducing the options for that kid 100%.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
100%.
And I know that's a smaller subject.
And that's a conscious byproduct of reducing your juvenile system.
That's
right?
that's exactly where
that's
I was
a
trying
conscious
to go.
byproduct.
That's where I was going.
And I think it's left to lawyers, public defenders largely, but also those of us in private practice, right, who get retained in these cases, to kind of pick up the slack. We don't have some things that other states have that can bridge that gap to some extent, right? So you have blended sentencing in some places, right?
That's where I was going.
Blended sentencing,
Exactly.
the advocacy community hates it, and I might get some calls on the way home,
I
right?
hope you do.
But
Just respond to your DMs. You're always available.
but you can absolutely have a juvenile. You can set a statute up so you have a juvenile treatment condition on adult probation, right?
Look, that's
and you
what
could
I've been
allow
talking
PBJ
about.
at any time, like during the next 10 years. I mean, you can tweak it any way you want, right? That is something Judge Hargadon did that a few times, right? When people had 2 cases and they were able to, or we were able to sort of move, one of them through juvenile court and create a rehabilitative disposition, basically, and then hold the other one in abeyance, right? And so there were some efforts to do that, but that gives judges some confidence. Like, oh, well, if you really fuck up, I can send you to prison. Okay, I feel a little bit better about this transfer now, But that's the sort of backsliding that you're not going to see support from the public defenders, from the ACLU on those sorts of things, right? But that would result in honestly more.
But it's pretty obvious that the legislature felt pressure by the public over the last year to.
The changes are pretty de minimis, though, don't you think? I mean,
The
I think
changes-
it
the
impacts
changes
a
are
small
pretty-
number of people.
No, it was MSAA.
know.
It was the Maryland States Attorneys Association
You know.
that said we want our power back. We're tired of DJS making some of the decisions that we think we should be able to weigh in on. I mean, that the big change to me was that. Otherwise, I thought the changes were de minimis.
I think what happened too with
I think the prosecutors made their point.
juveniles or individuals who were juveniles at the time of the offense and now have been in prison 15, 20, 25 years. We've represented some of those folks, including the person we were discussing a little bit earlier.
If we were saying Juvenile, back that ass up, would you also pronounce that rapper's name as Juvenile? I was just curious.
Wayne, what's
There's just choices. There's just choices in how,
Wayne.
yeah.
I'll tell you, I love some good New Orleans, good New Orleans rap. I mean,
You guys got deep in the weeds there.
what's
Listener Peter is making fun
what's
of
that? I
you.
mean, Project Chick
Making
or-
fun of James or making fun
What's
of
a-
me?
He's making fun of you. Who else would he make fun of?
What's a
He also
better
thinks
song?
that Adam.
Listener Peter is
He
our
thinks that
number one
Adam might
listener.
be asleep.
What's a better song than Project Chick?
That was my point.
AKA Project Bitch. What's
Yeah.
a better song? I mean,
Juvenile,
it's very
back that-
offensive.
back that ass
and I would
off.
never listen to
Back
it.
that
But
ass
you
up
know,
is top 10
10.
90s, early 2000s.
Corey
right
Millie's
there.
"See Murder." Do you remember him? Was
Yeah,
he
of
Juvenile's
course, man.
brother, or is he the other guy's brother? Yeah, he was. His career flourished while he
Yeah,
was in
rap is
pretrial
not our
detention.
strong suit on this show. We
Yeah,
don't.
clearly not,
yeah.
man.
No,
you
we
didn't
do.
go to Tulane hanging out, driving around the Chevy Cavalier uptown New Orleans
With David Banner, baby.
You know, it was good
Yeah.
times. It was good times. Yeah, but I think maybe we've run out of time. But talking about,
I mean, it's almost time for a potty break for you.
yeah, that's
We have
true.
to change you.
Yeah.
Talk about the zinc first.
Yeah, instead of an adult diaper, I just wear 2 juvenile.
I just when you're this
Juvenile.
age, when you're this age, they're actually called court diapers.
Court
I swear to
diapers,
God,
man.
Judge Cox looked at me today and he was like, "If you have to go to the bathroom, I'll
Just
kill
do
you."
it. Just
No,
do
no,
it.
I'll
I
kill
dare.
you. I'll kill
Just do
you.
it.
I dare you to
Um,
ask me to go to the restroom during a fucking motions hearing. I dare you.
Who was the woman who was the astronaut? Who did she drive?
Oh
through the
yeah,
night?
she was trying to like murder her boyfriend's girlfriend.
Yeah, we haven't even done
diaper
any
or something.
stories today. You talked so
The
much and so in depth.
adult diapers.
You got so deep into the kids.
I did have a supervisor briefly at the public defender's office who would use adult diapers as like a synonym or for working like over the weekend.
A synonym. I'm gonna
Not
let you do
that's
the
not
drink because
good,
I now have to take a potty break.
Yeah, be like, hey
Holy
what's going on with
cow,
that
you
murder
can't-
case, dude? It's
oh my
adult diaper
gosh.
weekend. You know, we're just yeah.
I'm AWOL. I gotta get back.
AWOL.
We have to talk
Goodness
about
You
gracious.
get prosecuted for that.
So we didn't do this on the off the top, but we were drinking
What is that?
tonic, in some cases gin
Yeah.
and soda. We picked up this bottle across the street, and this is the Empress 1908 Indigo Gin.
It's very delicious.
It is gin colored, COLOU,
Ah,
colored,
the British spelling.
with butterfly pea flower.
Is that PEE or PEA?
I'll let you decide. It delights the senses with its balanced citrus and spice palettes, brilliant color, light floral fragrance, and soft texture.
Keep going, Crandall.
Handcrafted using 8 botanicals, including, but not limited to, vibrant butterfly pea blossom.
Whoa.
The combination of exquisite taste, delicate aroma, and remarkable presentation provide a new aesthetic of cocktail creation. I'll say before we go into the tasting notes, what was interesting was that the gin is purplish. Would you say purple?
It's a really cool color.
It's
I
a
mean,
great
it.
color, but it changes.
Yeah, it's a very
it
nice
changes
beverage.
with tonic.
Oh, really?
Interesting. We're still in the drink.
Yeah.
We're good.
Sorry, I
had to feel a
phone call, client call.
Gideon, you want to jump in?
Yeah, so I'm a little mixed on this. I'm gonna be honest. So it's not very sweet, which I appreciate in a gin. I'll be the first to say that like Tanqueray is one of my least favorite gins, and it's because I think it's too sweet. So I like something that's a little bit drier. But whatever is making it purple, this butterfly piss or whatever it is,
Pea
the flower,
Pea flower, like
pollen. I don't know what it is. It adds this. It's almost like a very subtle berry flavor. Maybe that's just being
Botanical.
influenced by the color, but it adds like this bit of aftertaste that I don't particularly care
You don't
for.
like it. I see.
Jay, what do you think?
You know, I liked it. I think this is not an everyday drinking gin.
Yeah.
It's something a little different. What I like is the flavors are pretty strong.
Yeah.
So you know you're drinking something that's not like, I like the Botanist, right? I like some of
Mm-hmm.
these more floral gins, right? This is different. This is a unique sort of gin. I think the color is great too. Kind of adds a little something to it.
I like the
So
fact
I'm a
that
fan.
a lot of the gins that we've tried have been heavy on the citrus because that's something that a lot of people push.
Right.
And so it has the botanical flavor that you would expect in a gin without being too heavy on the juniper. I don't notice much of an aftertaste, honestly. I really enjoyed it, but we also did it with seltzer as opposed to tonic, and I wonder whether that changed the chemistry of the
Yeah,
drink.
when you poured the second drink, it was very heavy on the gin and less on the tonic. So I think I was getting a lot more of the gin.
People say I'm a heavy pour.
It's accurate.
Well,
God
Jay,
bless.
thanks for joining us.
As Judge Stemelis used to say, God bless America.
We hoped that you enjoyed listening as much as we enjoyed making today.
Do you have a sense of how
No,
many
I'm
people
closing
are
right now.
listening right
I'm
now?
closing.
Is it dynamic? Can you see?
Are you?
What do we have?
Oh my God! Did you just object during my closing?
Thank you for listening.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Sit back and relax and enjoy. This is the one thing that Kurt is good at. He rushes through it sometimes, but he's really good at the opening and the closing.
Thank you for listening to Lawyers on the Rocks. We hope you enjoyed listening as much as we enjoyed making. Thank you again to our guest, James
Happy to be here.
Johnston. And until next time, sit back, relax, pour yourself a drink. Until the next Lawyers on the Rocks.
Can he do that all the time now? Seriously, why doesn't he do? Can you do the opening and the closing from now on? Half the time, Kurt sighs or has an asthma attack as